Thank you, everyone. My name is Michelle O'Neill. I'm the President of the Australian Trade Union Movement, Australian Council of Trade Unions. It's my great honour to start today's proceedings by introducing you to Mandy Nicholson. Mandy is a proud Wurundjeri woman, and she's going to do a welcome to country.
Thank you. Thank you. And when I looked at this event and it being a women's conference, I jumped at it. I am a little late because I got a little bit lost in this huge building, so thank you for your patience. So firstly, I just wanted to talk a little bit about who I am and where I come from and where I fit into the world. So a traditional custodian of this place we call Melbourne. So the first original name of this place is Naarm. It means scrubland or bushland. And it's connected to our creation narratives of that river that we see out there. So the name of that river is Birrarung, or River of Mist. And there's two different variations to the creation of that river, but both of them talk about how there's a vast plain of marum, of kangaroo, and burrumul, emu. And that ended up being filled with water, and that's what we call Port Phillip Bay now. But the true name is Naarm, so much scrubland or much bushland. So when we delve into the meaning of place, the names that represent place, we find all this cultural knowledge that's been sleeping for way too long. So my name's Mandy, I'm a Wurundjeri woman, but I also have connections to the Dja Dja Wurrung and Yurayilm Wurrung language groups of Victoria. And there's 38 different language groups in this small state that people say is Victoria now, but we didn't have states, of course. So within those 38 language groups, there's different dialects. So there's over 65, 68, 70 different languages in this small area that we call Victoria. And in Australia, there's over 250 languages, and again, there's dialects. So there's over 650 languages in this country. So out of the 38 languages in Victoria, how many of those languages are spoken still today? The answer is zero. Zero. So what we have to do as women in our community is to bring our language back from sleeping, wake it up. So in terms of where I've come and how I'm standing in front of you right now, speaking about my culture has been led, I've been given the path by those trailblazers before me, and they have all been women. They've been black women, they've been white women, one of them being my mother. They have been staunch and strong throughout their journey. They've had to jump over hurdles. They've had to become masters at jumping over hurdles to create a culturally safe space for their community. And especially being a woman in this so-called Australia, back in the 1800s, and even today, it's been a very, very hard and difficult journey. So in terms of being treated unequally, in terms of being mistreated and misunderstood intellectually, it's still around, and I bet you it's still around the rest of the world. So the form of racism and sexism that still happens today has adapted over time, but it's still there. It just has many different faces. So in terms of a couple of women that I want to acknowledge, one is my mother, my Baban, my mother. She's from Germany. She suffered a lot of prejudice, racism, misjudgment throughout her whole life for being who she was. Then she met my father. My father's a Wurundjeri man. He also faced prejudice, racism, everything being unequal. My community, the men in my community going off to war, coming back, not given the same rights as the white man here. So they obviously fell in love because they were on the same journey, that same horrible journey that both of their backgrounds had suffered and still suffer, but they found love in that tragedy. And being able to be connected to those two beautiful people. They were married for 56 years. And it's something that I'm quite proud to talk about, and I could talk about them all day, but I know that we have a schedule to keep. And it's something that watching the elders around me, the female elders around me over the years, has helped me always know that they've been there. And I've always remembered them fighting for equality, fighting to be heard, fighting to make change. And now it's my time to do that. So in my community, I have a lot of young girls, a lot of babies, a lot of teenagers, and a lot of young women. And something that I missed out on growing up was ceremony, language. I had community around me, but then I moved off country and then community disappeared for me in my awkward years. But now it's my duty to be able to get these babies, get the young girls and children, young women together and give them a common grounding. And a common grounding is culture. Culture wasn't allowed us for so many years. My grandmother remembers hearing her mother, so my great-grandmother, speaking this weird language she'd never heard before. And that was the Woiwurrung language. So for my community, we haven't spoken our language every day for over 2 generations. So we're making change. We're making sure that our language never falls asleep again. Because some people say, you know, language is lost, language is dead. But if something's dead, you can never wake it up. So my journey is that I ended up working at First Nations community organisations my whole life, but I worked at a language centre that focused on First Nation languages. That enabled me to open doors to understanding the structure and the pronunciation of my language. And in doing that, I was able to unpack the words and find hidden or sleeping cultural meaning. And one really beautiful example is the word womanjika. So womanjika is commonly referred to as welcome, but woman is to come from somewhere, ji is an instruction of being asked to come, and ka is purpose. So that's just a little bit of my journey of why I can stand in front of you right now is because the women, the staunch women around me my whole life has enabled me to ricochet all of that racism, all of that prejudice away from me. And I'm able to stand here and be able to share that strength that they've given me to give them strength. Now, the other night, we applied for an award, Melbourne Awards, and it recognises community strength, community leadership within the First Nation community, and it's called Gumbu Gulanya. So Gumbu is one, and Gulanya is mob, so one mob. And we won. And we were up against these beautiful Long Walk, the Long Walk and Indigenous Leadership Initiative. And I thought, we're not going to win. In my head, we're not going to win because they've just described us as a dance group. But we won because of the strength that they see in these beautiful young women that are coming up as leaders. And I just want to finish off now, again, just honouring those trailblazers that allow me to speak about my culture, where, again, we weren't allowed to for so long. Biladu nyan wangat naranik mandi, waranjeri wilamik waranjeri balakut, mundanai murup galada birarang, mundanai kirapik, mundanai bupup nak warenik ba lalal ba gugung nugulik, ba bikut bikdui banyabik, murnmutbik, wurubik, ba darangogik, ba bunjalal wilamu. It's a beautiful language. It will never fall asleep again. And what I said is that I embrace all of my ancestors, my friends, my kirip, the Galada Birarang, the Spirit River down there, the Yarra River, and all of the different layers of country. So I welcome you to the Bikut, below country, the Bikdui, the on country, Banyabik, water country, Murnmutbik, wind country, Wurruwurrubik, sky country, and Darangogbik, star country. Darang is tree, Golk is stick, and Bik is country. So the bush country that's reflected up in the stars. So Nungojan, thank you so much and enjoy the rest of your conference.
How amazing was that? Thank you again, Mandy. We really appreciate the extraordinary gift you just gave us. Thank you. And now we have a song. Shelley is going to join us on the stage. And welcome, Shelley. It's fantastic to have you with us.
Hello. How's everybody doing? Good? How's everybody doing? Oh, I can't hear you. How's everybody doing? Yeah. Thank you, Mandy. That means so much to me, your talk, because I come from the Northern Territory where there is, fortunately, language still spoken, but I was removed. So I had to go back and learn and sit on the ground. And I acknowledge this beautiful scrubby country, bush country, Wurundjeri country that I'm on. And I thank you and honour your ancestors. As I'm here in this place, my country is from long, long way from here. I'm from Borroloola. It's Yanyuwa country in the Gulf of Carpentaria. And I will introduce myself in my language. Manajingana jana wugainji. Yanyuwa yironga ngana nalki. Amambalia ngana wuningo awalo gurarko ni yijan bara. Pauchi jina bara buka nakareli wankala. Ganalo ngonda ngara wuga nya alunga lingara le malango. Hello, I am here. I'm talking the Yanyuwa language to you. My clan is Mambalia, and my name from the country is Awalo. It is a name from the Brolga dreaming. This language is from the old people. They gave me this language to speak, the language that belongs to my family. I was thinking about the song that I was going to sing for you. And I've been changing it from what's in the program. Because I have been sitting on the ground for over 27 years in the most remotest regions of this country, making music with over 70 remote communities. Not because I felt I had to, it was because that's where I was meant to be. To encourage our children and our women to have a voice through song. I couldn't change the poverty and the housing. I couldn't change the health. But I could help people sing. I could write songs. And then within those songs, I saw heads feeling taller and women feeling empowered, teaching me how to sing in that particular language from that particular place. It wasn't easy. I cried many tears, but I never gave up, ever. So this, thank you. This song is about women sitting strong. If we stand together, we can be pushed over, but when we're sitting together, we cannot be moved. So it's in Yolongomata and English. In Yolongomata it says, Yongo mialk mala, nina strong. We're sitting strong. and we come from many nations, many languages. And I'm really deeply, deeply honored to be here today. I flew all night, so I got jet lag like you. We're in the same boat. Yo, thank you. You take the time to talk with me. You'll know I am the land and sea. Oh, 'cause I'm melting in my skin. Yeah, ancestors' knowledge is deep within. Yongo miak mala, miak nina strong. Whoa, I am Yongo miak mala. I am strong. I am strong. No, I am strong. I am strong. No. And as I wait for the seasons to roll in, and I know the fruits of the land. Color does not separate me from you. One Angolan, one blood that's true. Yongo miak mala. Mia nina strong. Oh, I am your more miak mala. I am strong. I am strong. No, I am strong. I am strong. No. As I watch the waves rolling, my reflections are pure. Yet in my spirit roaming free. Yet in my spirit roaming free. Yongo miak mala. Women sitting strong. Oh, I am Yongo miak mala. I am strong. I am strong. No, I am strong. I am strong. No, I am strong. I am strong. No.
Shelley Morris, what a great song to introduce us. We are strong. Are we strong? So I wanted to say thank you to Mandy because I now really feel like I'm home. Makes me really emotional, actually, because I was born into Wiradjuri country, which is in the central west of New South Wales. And for you, my sisters, it's a lost culture. It has been traditionally a lost culture for all of Australians because our history, and I was a teacher, our history was denied to the children of this country for too long. These women, Mandy, a young woman, Shelley, many others, bringing it back. It's so wonderful. But Wurundjeri country, this land now, Mandy's land, is my home and has been, like Michelle, for decades now. And just over there, you can't see it from here, but there's a beautiful white bird, a totem called Bunjil. Bunjil? Yes. And he stands strong and proud looking over the bay. And I feel like we can feel that spirit right here in this room. And I'm so happy you can all share this. So, welcome. I would acknowledge formally, of course, the Wurundjeri people as the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today. Pay my respects, but I know you will pay your respects to their elders past and present, and indeed emerging, because Mandy is a young woman. To have an emerging elder like that is just fantastic. I extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples here today, but indeed to Indigenous peoples from other lands around the world. I know for my Canadian sisters, for my Japanese sisters, for many others, your solidarity with Indigenous people and Indigenous women in particular has been so strong, so solid, and I thank all of you. It is extraordinary to be together again. I feel like we had this time machine that interrupted our communications. But I do say that thank you, because I've been in many of your lands and homes, and now it's really nice to welcome you to ours, and I'm sure Michelle will reiterate that. And I can say the Australian Council of Trade Unions, our host, is led by two extraordinary women, Michelle O'Neill, the President, and a woman you'll meet during the week, Sally McManus, the General Secretary, because in the Australian Council of Trade Unions we share power, but it's the first time that we've had two women at the helm, and that's just remarkable. There's another Australian woman in this room who was the chair of the ICFTU Women's Committee, one of our predecessor parents, Helen Creed. I don't know where you are, but Helen presided over the last time we met in Melbourne, which was the ICFTU Women's Conference. There she is, an amazing Labor woman with a whole history of her own, but from Western Australia, indeed on the other side of the country. But I wanted to just acknowledge the strength that Shelley sang about, because Michelle and Sally haven't let anything get past them since they took over. Indeed, you'll hear a lot more about this. But when you look at their victories already, then, you know, the fight for domestic violence leave, Vicky, Siobhan, the Canadian women, I know just how hard you fought for this, but so did Australian women. And indeed, they've just achieved 10 paid days of leave for women to actually seek safe haven, make sure their children are safe. So it's not just made it a workplace issue, it's been legislated, and that's an incredible victory. Congratulations. They also took something that's very dear to my heart and to Helen's, because we fought, our generation, for 10 years, 10 solid years, and some before that, with my predecessor, for paid maternity leave. And when we were here in 2003, it was the Sisters of the World who stood with us in Federation Square, not far from here, and brought solidarity to the Australian women fighting for paid maternity, now parental leave, But Michelle and Sally have seen that extended to 6 months of paid leave. That's extraordinary. And now, of course, and you'll hear more throughout the week, but we are standing with them in solidarity for a return to a mature industrial relations system and the strength of collective bargaining on a multi-employer basis. So many of you may well be asked to give testimony to the more equal outcomes of multi-employer bargaining. But I just say congratulations, Michelle, and I'm really proud to stand next to you again. So, on a global scale, though, sisters, I don't have such good news. Progress for women has stalled. Indeed, on almost all indicators, it's actually going backwards. During the pandemic, women lost $850 billion worth of income. Think about that. That's the combined GDP of about 98 countries. That's an enormous loss, not just to women's wealth, but to shared prosperity and, of course, the security for their families. Participation rates are the lowest in decades. They've been falling for the last 2 decades, but have been exacerbated by the pandemic, and now we're sitting back at about 62.9%. Of course, the pay gap remains persistently more than 20%, and that's in the formal economy. When you go to the informality that many of you deal with, and one of our greatest fights to formalise work in the informal economy, because the bulk of the participants in that part of our economy are women, then we know that we're dealing with a broken labour market. And for the 60% of people, the majority of whom are women, working in informal work, no rights, no minimum wage, no rule of law, then we don't even know what the statistics are in too many areas of their income, or indeed, you know, the priorities that they need, apart from the fact that we know where increasingly they are being organised by unions. CEWA, of course, our lighthouse on the hill, but many of the rest of you who are organising women, they can tell you that eking out a pittance is the daily struggle for too many of our sisters. But we are facing a convergence of crisis, including now increasing conflict. Everybody's focused on the fact that there's now another war in Europe with the abhorrent invasion of Russia into Ukraine. But I can tell you there are some 68 other conflicts around the world. You know, too many of you, the impact of that on your lives and the sense of security, or the capacity to build a secure working life. We are seeing the cost of climate emergency with devastating and extreme weather events in many countries. In this region alone, you can say Pakistan, the Philippines, right here in Australia, the loss of lives and livelihoods from fires, floods, but also, of course, from simply the changing seasons because of heat. We also know that the violence generally is actually, much of it, unfortunately, male-driven. Afghanistan, if you think about the hope that women in Afghanistan had, and many of you who've been involved with us in supporting refugees out of Afghanistan, you know that women are simply not safe there again. And Iran, we of course stand in solidarity with the women's protests in Iran. How brave are they? How brave are they? But I do want to give you some hope, because we put the care economy on the agenda. It was the women of the ITUC, stuck in history, the ITUC, who actually put care on the agenda. And now we have a global accelerator on jobs, social protection and just transitions. We know that there's a global care alliance I think, Marika, I always get the numbers wrong, but 12, 13, 14 countries. I know this week I was told in Bali at the G20 that the US is actually going to announce, or did announce, that they want to join the Global Care Alliance. These are countries who've pledged to invest more money in care. We know that there's an absolute underinvestment in care, but we also know if you want to create jobs and lift good jobs and lift the burden of care from women, then investing in health, education, childcare, aged care, community care, that's the answer. There are not only millions and millions of jobs, but in fact, it frees women from the burden of care to work in other areas of the economy and is the fastest multiplier for economic growth. So you can be very proud of the fact that not only is care now a major issue, investment in care a major issue, decent work for the essential workers in care a recognised issue around the world, but the UN Secretary-General himself has put a global accelerator for jobs, social protection and just transitions on the agenda. And one of the areas, one of the three major areas where we can and need to create jobs in the formal economy is in fact in care, then in infrastructure and of course in the climate transition. But we also need, and we haven't won this yet, we are demanding within that structure that we formalise at least half of the informal jobs, and that's 1 billion jobs around the world. So organising in the informal economy is absolutely a central challenge for all of us. I will tell you that the virtual Women's Conference sessions you've already had came up with very strong conclusions on these and many other issues. They've been integrated into the current Congress statement, so thank you to all the colleagues for the engagement and the important outcomes. There's an absolute commitment to a social contract that is not just about jobs and social protection and rights, but indeed about equality and about inclusion as well. And that equality used to be about just wages. We've now lifted that out as a separate demand in the context of the crisis of living standards all around the world. But it's also about equality of women and equality of race. And if we are not inclusive, both as a movement and indeed demanding inclusion for all peoples all around the world, no matter where they come from, whether they're migrants or indeed country nationals, then we are not serious about representing people everywhere. I will tell you that the Congress, though, is going to need your voices. The plenary will be a debate about the Congress statement. It reads like a thesis, but in fact it is your work. We've decided to put almost every perspective we could in that under those 6 demands, though, because if we have a common narrative of a new social contract, then countries can decide what is most important to them of the 6 demands and what particular perspectives they're fighting for, but allows us to unite the world with a demand that governments pay again attention to their people and not simply be cowed by the corporations and the wealthy. We are indeed also pleased to have 4 Congress forums where you can participate and speak up. The plenary, of course, is more limited, but whether you're a delegate or whether you're an observer, you are welcome in the forums. And they will be on, first of all, the lessons that we've learned from global shocks. They will be on technological change and the impact on the world of work. They will be on the question of an inclusive union movement, how we actually have a union movement nationally and globally that's representative, that includes everybody. And I look forward to your contribution in all of them, along with that on climate and just transition. There's also a very exciting set of 9 hours of work on organising. And so for the organisers amongst you, don't miss out. It'll be lively, it'll be educative, it'll be sharing best practice, and it will be fun. And they are in the afternoons of the Congress, plenaries in the morning, forums and organising in the afternoons. And of course, there are many side events I don't have time to indeed go into. I will say that we still have a challenge. The 4th World Women's Conference outcome document includes a commitment to 50% of representation on the decision-making bodies of all ITUC affiliates. We have it in this Congress, but we need it in all ITUC affiliates by the time of the 6th ITUC World Congress, 4 years away. So we are still fighting for equal representation. And indeed, the Congress statement reiterates the call from the Copenhagen Congress for affiliates to have a minimum of 40% of leadership positions held by women and supports the objective of 50% by the time of the next Congress. And we have that challenge ourselves in the ITUC Secretariat, because while we've done very well in terms of a president, a deputy president, indeed, I don't know if Kathy Feingold's in the room, but she's been my deputy president for the last 4 years, and she is magnificent, and I thank her. But in the Secretariat, we've had me and 3 deputy secretaries. And it doesn't look like we're going to improve that ratio this time round either. We did write into the rules that at least one of the Secretariat had to be a woman. So let's get a woman elected. But are we satisfied with that? So by the time of the next Congress, we'd like to see 50% at the helm in the ITUC Secretariat as well. And as your outgoing General Secretary, I'm handing over the baton to you to fight to make that possible. I will just congratulate you if you think over 10 years of and 3 Congresses, then we started by demanding that we were counted in. Remember the slogan, count us in? I'm sure some of you can still do it. Let's try it. Count us in. Count us in. Once more, count us in. And we said, count us into the workforce, count us into the union movement, and count us in to the social, economic and political lives of our communities everywhere. But then we decided we would fight to see that some others were counted in. Domestic workers. 10 years to get that magnificent convention on domestic workers. Give yourselves a big hand, because there's now 150,000 workers organised. Remember when they told us you couldn't organise domestic workers? Well, you've proved them wrong. And then, of course, when we raised the informal economy, we were told it was a product of development and you couldn't do anything about it. We have a standard at the ILO about formalising the informal economy. We've put it on the demands in terms of the 1 billion jobs. We will win on that front as well. And then, of course, the issue of violence. Women had raised the issue of violence for generations, but Convention 190, magnificent victory. And now we want it ratified everywhere. So that's the fight. But as well as ratification, we want to see it, of course, implemented in very many practical ways. Care, we've talked about. And there's so much more. You know that ITUC women are a force for change everywhere. I'm really proud to have been your secretary. I know your strength, and I will leave you with my own personal view that when you stand up as a feminist who cares about the women around you, their families, their communities, then wearing that feminist badge is indeed a matter of pride, and we should embrace that every time, everywhere. Thank you very much.
Hello again, sisters. It's Michelle O'Neill. I'm the President of the Australian Council of Trade Unions, and I'm so proud to welcome Sharon home and to welcome you all to Australia. I want to also begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands we're meeting on today, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and pay all my respect to their elders past and present. And it always was, and it always will be, Aboriginal land. And what an extraordinary welcome to country we had from Mandy and Shelley with her song for us today. And Sharon, we are so pleased to have you home. There'll be time over the next few days to acknowledge the extraordinary work our sister has done here at the ITUC that I know you are all so familiar with, but we are very, very proud of you. And sisters, it is an absolute pleasure to welcome you to Melbourne. I am so sorry about the weather. All I can say to you is that it's predicted to improve. And before I was the president of the Australian Council of Trade Unions, we just have one national centre in Australia that represents all our unions in our country. I led the textile, clothing and footwear union, so I do have some spare coats and scarves, and so if any of you are really freezing, I will raid my wardrobe for you. I want to talk to you today about some of the struggles and some of the achievements on gender equality here in Australia. Women in Australia are still lower paid. We have less superannuation or retirement income. We're more likely to be in casual, part-time or precarious work, to have unpredictable hours and rosters, to have fewer hours of work, are more likely to have to work multiple jobs just to get by, less likely to have any access to paid leave, more likely to be discriminated against, harassed and assaulted at work. If you are a First Nations woman, a woman of colour, a migrant woman, or from a culturally and linguistically diverse background, if you are living with a disability or an LGBTIQA plus woman, these figures are considerably worse due to the systemic and entrenched nature of inequality in our country and around the world. A few months ago, I met a woman called Ruby. She was a proud Filipino Australia living up in Cairns in the north of our country. She works in residential aged care as a carer. Her co-workers told me about how fantastic she was at her job. She showed me the bruises on her arm and told me how hard her job was, but how much she loved it. But this was Ruby's first job. Because she can't get enough guaranteed hours or pay to meet the costs of living for her and her children, she does 2 other jobs. Ruby's also a disability care worker, and she also works in a hospital as a care assistant. 3 jobs, 3 underpaid, undervalued jobs. 3 jobs in the care economy where work is predominantly done by women. So I want to acknowledge that as far as we have come, there is still a journey in front of us and a lot of work for us to do. Work to do in finally closing the gender pay gap. Work to do in ending gender-based violence and sexual harassment at work. Work to do in making sure industries and sectors with workforces where women are in the majority are no longer undervalued and underpaid. How can we think that looking after our youngest, caring for our babies and children in childcare and early childhood education and care, and caring for our elders at the end of our life, how can we think of that as anything other than the most valuable and important work to do? Yet around the world, we still undervalue this work. There's work to do to ensure that women are still not carrying the vast bulk of unpaid and unsupported care responsibilities on top of their paid work. And of course, there's work to do to make sure that it's not just women who are doing this work to win these changes. We need and we expect good men to step up and drive this change with us. These challenges are not unique to us here in Australia. We're a global movement and we all know that there is much vitally important work to do to combat sexism and gender inequality all over the world. I want to make sure every one of you here today knows that we in Australia are aware of the remarkable activism you are doing every single day around the world. We see you, we support you, we're inspired by you. Our struggle is one united struggle. One struggle by women workers against inequality and for a fairer and more just world. Safety and respect and equity are our rights. In Australia in 2020, women took to the streets. All over the country, there were things called marches for justice. And they came about because one young woman who was working in our Parliament House in Canberra, in our nation's capital, spoke out bravely and publicly about her claim of being raped in a minister's office just metres from our Prime Minister's door. That lit a spark because, of course, her story is all our story. Women all over our country and the world experiencing violence and harassment at work. And the rallying cry of those marches was enough is enough. We see this demand for justice in the protests currently underway, as we heard from Sharon, in Iran, where women are literally risking their lives by taking action against the fiercest repression. We see this in countries such as the United States, where women are mobilising to restore abortion rights. All across the globe, women workers are fighting for our essential and fundamental rights, and that is just true as it is here in Australia. This has been a significant year for women in Australia, and as Sharon mentioned, we won just last month 10 days paid family and domestic violence leave for every worker in our country. And also the introduction of that move to 6 months paid parental leave. But that family and domestic violence leave is something that I'll have the opportunity to talk about in one of the Congress events. But I want to say this, it's a transformative victory. It will change lives and it will save lives, because no worker should ever have to choose that wicked choice between the safety of yourself and your children and your job and your income. That's why it will save lives. Economic security is so critical to our choices and something core to what we're fighting for as unionists. And I want to pay tribute to all of those women who fought for over a decade to win this. As we speak today, there's a new bill going into the Australian Parliament just a few weeks ago that changes again the laws that will affect workers' rights, but in particular women's rights here in Australia. We are trying to win this and get it voted on before Christmas. You'll hear about it a bit over the next few days. But one of the things it does is make an object of our Fair Work laws gender equality, so that all the decisions that get made in our workplace laws have to be looked at through that lens. It changes our pay equity laws, because we won, in theory, equal pay decades ago, but it's still not the reality in women's lives, and we still are paid 14.1% less than men in this country. It'll ban the practice of pay secrecy clauses, where workers are banned from telling other workers what they're paid, just as a way of suppressing information and power. It'll create new panels in our expert tribunals about looking at work and care and pay equity. It will put in place new obligations about sexual harassment, where it's not just about complaints processes, but an obligation on employers to prevent sexual harassment, a legal obligation to prevent it in workplaces. So these things we're trying to fight for and win at this moment. And it also, of course, will extend our bargaining system so women in those sectors that have been locked out of bargaining, because our bargaining is enterprise-based, can come together and join together in sector and multi-employer bargaining. So important to drive change in our country. So it is very exciting to have you here with us, and it's an exciting time because you are here when we are in the middle of this battle. And sisters, we are going to call on you to help while you're here. And right now, we've got members taking action to win this all over this country. And we know that solidarity is what we understand. It's in our blood. It's what we're good at. And it's a tradition of activism and social change that is true of unions here and unions around the world, and one that does not just belong to any one country. It belongs to all of us, to every woman in this room, to every woman you are here to represent, to every woman who labours and toils in whatever industry, in whatever sector, in whatever trade, wherever they are in the world. It's such a proud, strong tradition of struggle. A tradition of action, a proud tradition of vision, of imagining a better and fairer and more equal world. And that's what we've come here to do today, to imagine and discuss and create a new social contract, a contract born of our experiences, our struggles, our solidarity, a social contract that will add to that long and proud tradition of workers' internationalism as we struggle to make a better world for all women and the women who will follow us. We follow so many great and strong women whose shoulders we stand on, and we must make that path for the women that come after us as well. Sisters, I'm going to end with this. We are warriors. We are actually bold believers, and we are fiercely determined. I hope that your time here today and over the next few days in Australia brings you strength, sisterhood, and solidarity. I hope and I know that our voices in the coming Congress will be loud and strong and heard. Sisters, welcome to Australia.
Thank you, Michelle, for those wonderful words. I will say this Canadian appreciates the weather. It's beautiful, but thank you for the wonderful start. My name is Siobhan. I am the current chair of the Women's Committee. My pronouns are she, her, and it is my pleasure to be here with you today. I would like to go through what today's session is going to be about, and what we're going to do and how we're going to focus. And it is absolutely wonderful to see you all here, to be in person, so that we can do the camaraderie that is required for the work that I think brings us forward. I appreciate people following and respecting each other's place in terms of our mask wearing, of where everybody is coming from around the world is at a different place. And these rules are for us to respect each other so that we can all go home safely. And so thank you for that. We're, as has been said so well by Sharon, at such an interesting time to be having this conference in terms of where the workers of the world and trade unions are because of this intersecting of crises that we're experiencing. This critical time around health, economy, energy, and peace just shows how much work we have in front of us. But the reality is that because of the work that you have done before we have come here and the work that has been put together is that we have the answers. We know what needs to be done to ensure that we have a intersectional feminist lens on the work to get us to a place where everybody is experiencing life better. Everything that has been happening, although it has affected all of us, it hasn't affected all of us the same. And that will continue to be our truth, and so we need to be there to ensure that we are putting our best foot forward and supporting and lifting up our sisters and comrades. And so what you'll see in our documentation is the It was in your digital. There's going to be a QR code at some point up so you can look at it. And it's in this outcome document that outlines what can be done, what needs to be done by all levels of governments, by our communities, and by those around us to ensure that we can have a more equal world and that workers are getting ahead. And so we want to make sure that when we come together that we acknowledge that work, but also get inspired by story and by each other, because in this room is so full of leaders, so full of people who have been taking these agendas and pushing them forward for each of us. And so we want to take this opportunity to take this document that was adopted earlier this year. It was by the Women's Committee and then subsequently by the General Council. And then we know that there are stories out there of how this has been put into place. And so we want to hear that and we want to be inspired by that. And so our objective today will be to go through this outcome document, to talk to people, to hear those stories, to get inspired so we can go back to our own unions and our own countries and to improve the conditions for everybody. And so these inspirational visions, I think, is why we're so happy to be in person. And so these inputs that we will hear, and we'll hear from you, we will be keeping in a timely fashion. I have my phone, not because I'm expecting a text, but I have what could be arguably an impossible task of keeping us on time. But this is such important work that we have done together. So please bear with us when we try and move things ahead, because there are so many stories that we need to hear from and so many fights that we want to share. So if you go to the webpage, you will see the outline of what today's program looks like. And there's a QR code, of course, to help you do that. We also want to make sure you take this opportunity to share on social media what you hear, your experiences, so that we can echo for those who maybe aren't as privileged as us to be in this room, but also to make sure that everybody is aware that the work that we do as a union movement will always be best based with a gendered lens. And so we're asking you to use the hashtag for WWC, and that should be on a screen. At some point you will see it. And so we will follow that agenda. We will get our speakers up here, and there are so many. It's just absolutely awesome. And it is such a pleasure to have started this meeting with Mandy reminding us of place and of why we're here. I come from Canada, and we do these land acknowledgements at our meetings, partly to learn about place and people and water, and also to recommit to the work to undo the ongoing and historical injustices against Indigenous peoples. And so that was extremely inspiring today to start, as well as to hear the song from Shelley to get us going. And I have to say, Sharon, to be here in your home and to hear the work that you've done as a true advocate for all of us is also a great way to start. So without further ado, I want to move us on to our first part of the formal part of our meeting, which will be to go through this document. And Paula, who is absolutely fantastic, is going to walk us through it and to talk about the highlights of it. And then we will have a place to start hearing about the action items afterwards. So Paula, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, our dear Chair, Shibon, and good afternoon, colleagues and sisters. So my intervention, it's really to put the accent on the main elements on both the rationale and the recommendation of our outcome documents. And of course, for those who still are not familiar with that, we really invite you to go to our website and to download and have a look at it more in the detail. So, as Sharon said, the theme of this Congress is the new social contract. So, a new social contract rooted in a gender transformative agenda. We are living in a multiple crisis era. We know the pandemic, the war, the terrible news today, inflation, climate crisis. While this is a crisis that affects us all, not all are affected in the same way. Young women, women of color, women migrant workers, indigenous women and women in informal economy, including domestic workers and women with disabilities, have been particularly hit hard. We know that women's working life will be disrupted over a long period of time unless appropriate measures are adopted. This is why we need a new social contract. This new social contract embodies demands on the creation of 575 million new and decent jobs by 2030, and the formalization of at least 1 billion informal workers. We want rights, we want fair wages, we want universal social protection, and of course, equality and inclusion. These elements are crucial if we want to go towards the realization of the Sustainable Development Goals. Building a care economy, again, it was mentioned. Building a care economy is a fundamental pillar for the employment creation. The care economy is crucial to realize our ambition on women participation to the labor market, but also to build fairer and more inclusive societies. The ILO estimates that a global investment in universal childcare and long-term care would create 280 million jobs by 2030. 2/3 of the global care workforce are women, but too many of them are still trapped in underpaid, precarious, and informal jobs. And this is why we are calling on to have two main demands. First, public investment of adequate levels of national gross domestic product, GDP, in the care economy, creating millions of new decent jobs for women, enabling women's effective participation in the broader economy, and ensuring universal access to quality public health, care, and education services. And then more widely, the implementation of comprehensive care system and economy frameworks based on the recognition, the reduction, and redistribution of unpaid care work, rewards for care work, and more and decent jobs, and of course ensuring representation of care workers through collective bargaining and social dialogue. Our recent report, the ITUC report, launched a few days ago, presents country-specific data on the job creation potential, but also reflects inspiring examples where trade unions are working to put comprehensive care system in place. And I'm referring, for example, to Canada and India, where trade unions are claiming more investments for care policy. In Canada, the establishment of a national childcare system. Also in Dominican Republic and in South Africa, where trade unions have won minimum living wages for care workers. In Argentina, in Spain, where care inequality legislation in Argentina is being negotiated now, and in Spain, the first country in the EU to implement the EU Work-Life Balance Directive. So it's really an amazing work that trade unions are doing all over the world. But a new social contract cannot be done without eradicating gender-based violence and harassment in the world of work. We have just heard wonderful examples and inspiring experience from Australia. So the pandemic triggered a surge in gender-based violence and harassment, including domestic violence in the form of physical, psychological, and economic abuse. This has devastating impacts on women's life and also brings about adverse economic consequences on women's livelihood. Again, the recent ITUC report that was launched says that 97% of trade unions are working to secure the ratification of implementation C190. And 91% of trade unions are actually working for national laws and policies, and 77% are actually negotiating workplace policies or collective bargaining agreements. So the ratification and effective implementation of C190 and Recommendation 206 through collective bargaining is more urgent than ever. And in this respect, we highlight the important work of the Global Unions Federation in bringing gender-based violence and harassment provisions in the global framework agreements with multinational and enterprises, H&M, Tesco, Unilever, Engie, just to name a few. In times of war, as I was mentioning before, upholding gender equality and inclusion for peace and democracy is key. Equality and inclusion are at the very heart of peace, freedom, and democracy. As Sharon recalled, our solidarity goes to the women just in Iran fighting for their own freedom. But during the conference, in the previous iteration, we could hear a variety of experiences ranging from countries at risk to other countries where democracies are in place. Still, in the latter ones, we see that women workers and most vulnerable workers can suffer from marginalization and segregation, often brought by far-right political movements. Therefore, we call for the commitment of trade unions to shaping a world free of all forms of discrimination based on gender, class, race, ethnicity, ideology, religion, sexual orientation, and gender identity, or other grounds, and the intersection of those. We call for the centrality of trade unions' international solidarity and the engagement for a rights-based development model with a renewed multilateral system. And then we insist that trade union organizations ensure women's equal participation and full involvement in all efforts for the maintenance and promotion of peace and security, including in peace negotiation and peace processes. Realizing equal pay for work of equal value for all. The lack of equal pay for work of equal value is one of the main factors hampering equitable and inclusive labor markets. SDG 8, Goal 8, on employment and decent work enshrines equal pay amongst its targets, underscoring that an equitable and inclusive world of work is a precondition to gender equality and societal progress overall. Therefore, in the document, we recommend an array of actions that I won't be listing in detail, but this array of actions, including pay transparency that was recalled by Michelle, needs to be rooted in the centrality of collective bargaining and social dialogue to put an end to gender pay gap. Only 46.9% of global population is covered by at least one social protection benefit. The rest is left unprotected. Therefore, we must go towards universal gender-responsive social protection system as a way to advance again towards the realization of the Sustainable Development Goals. And therefore, we call for specific policy to close the gender pay gap in social protection. We call for adequate funding of social protection reforms through progressive national tax system, tax reform measures, and debt relief. And then last but not least, we need to fight for the establishment of a global social protection fund for the least wealthy countries that don't have the means to put in place such a system. Ensure a gender transformative just transition is more stringent than ever. Women bear the brunt of the climate emergency and are at risk to encounter a further deepening of the already persistent inequalities in the labor market. We call, therefore, to adopt and implement gender transformative just transition plans everywhere, in line with the International Labour Organization guidelines for a just transition. We call for increasing public investment in the care economy, but also in the renewable energy, and ensuring access to young women to STEAM-related education and jobs. But we also want business to play its part. We want business to ensure environmental and human rights due diligence in their operation and along global supply chain. And we want to ensure that the wealthiest companies contribute the most for social investment. Then, in this respect, access to skills development, training, and lifelong learning is also equally important. Lifelong learning requires investment at all levels, from preschool through the higher education. Equal access for girls and women at all this level is vital. Education and training strategies with active labor market policies for skilling, reskilling, and upskilling are key to just transition plans in the context of both climate and technological shifts. However, the gender divide in women's access to skills development remained wide. Gender disparity persists in access to technical vocational education and training, formal and non-formal education, as well as apprenticeship and traineeship. And therefore, here again, we want targeted measures to close the gender digital divide. All these measures should be rooted in social dialogue and collective bargaining to forge and implement lifelong learning and skills development policies. And last but not least, colleagues, building women's transformational leadership. It is critical to the future of our movement to ensure that its leadership is reflective, representative, and inclusive of its current and future membership and base. Therefore, we call for trade union organizations to ensure the inclusive nature of their own structures, agendas, and processes, and achieve equal and equitable representation of women in the leadership of trade unions. We call for trade unions to enhance efforts towards organizing women in all their diversity, as well as other equity-seeking groups of workers, including racialized, migrant workers, disabled, and LGBTQI+ workers. And we call for trade unions to commit to a minimum of 50% women's representation in decision-making bodies of all ITUC affiliates, following the example of those affiliates that have already achieved gender parity. The ITUC, through the Women in Liberty program, has already started supporting women in the leadership, and we will do it again with the iteration of the Women in Leadership in 2023. So, colleagues, sisters, it's up on us. Let's make it happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paula. And like we said, you have access to that full document in the digital packages, so please take advantage of that. So we want to get on to our first panel of speakers, so I would invite them to make their way to the stage. We have 7. Yes, please come and take a seat. We're very excited to welcome Amira from the AFL-CIO in the US, Dur from the PWF in Pakistan, Yunea from CUT in Brazil, Paula from the CATP in Peru, Jyoti from Siwa in India, Lebagang from COSATU in South Africa, and Rajnild from the UNIO in Norway. Thank you for finding your seats. and we will start here. So like we said, this is an opportunity for us to hear these really inspirational stories from each of you, these amazing leaders about aspects of these outcomes that we want to see. And so, Amira, I will start with you.
Can you guys hear me? Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much, Siobhan. I'm so pleased to be with all of you today on behalf of Bonnie Castillo, who represents the AFL-CIO on the Women's Committee at the ITUC and chairs the AFL-CIO's Women Workers Committee. She sends her deepest regrets. She had planned to be here with you all today, but was needed back home for a really critical labor dispute for our nurses in California. We are so thrilled to be working with all of you together to advance gender equality and gender equity. And can I just say, it is amazing to be in this room with so many women who are leading the labor movement and fighting for women workers and all workers. It is incredible. We are in an ideal moment right now to be fighting to build a robust care economy. In the United States, the COVID pandemic has imposed huge costs on both paid and unpaid caregivers. And as a result, it has publicly exposed the massive weaknesses in our care infrastructure. Throughout the pandemic, women have paid the price for our lack of a care infrastructure, and many women have left the paid workforce to care for children and family members. Women workers accounted for the majority of jobs lost during this pandemic, and they make up the majority of workers who have left the paid workforce to care for our children, for elders, for sick family and community members, where our infrastructure has failed us. Some care workers have also chosen to leave the paid economy to protect themselves and their families from exposure to elevated risk, vulnerability, and inequity. In the US healthcare sector, where we represent nurses, thousands of healthcare workers have died from COVID, and millions were made sick and continue to be made sick during this pandemic because employers have refused to implement effective health and safety measures. Nearly 1 in 5 healthcare workers in the United States have quit their jobs during the pandemic. Why? Because of moral injury and a lack of good, permanent jobs where healthcare workers are fully valued for their work through safe staffing, through strong union protections, and safe and healthy workplaces. But additionally, the United States government has failed to implement policies that would guarantee healthcare to every person in our country. As a result, 1.07 million people in the United States have died of COVID-19, more than any other country in the world. To my country's great shame, the United States has 4.2% of the world's population, but 16.2% of the world's COVID fatalities. Unfortunately, we do not have a universal healthcare system in the US. We have a for-profit healthcare system run by massive corporations that prioritize profits over patient care and workers. Instead of investing in the care economy, the healthcare industry laid off 500,000 healthcare workers at the height of this pandemic, even while they were receiving massive government bailouts and posting record profits. In the United States, unions have been leading an organized fight to reverse these trends by fighting for legislation and workplace policies that value care workers and prioritize safe, therapeutic patient care. Many thanks here to the visionary leadership of AFL-CIO President Liz Schuler, who's here today, the first woman to lead the AFL-CIO. Liz has been an extraordinary leader in the fight to build a more robust care economy and to support women workers. Together, we have been fighting to win large investments in healthcare and in home and community-based services that would create millions of union jobs and would make healthcare a guaranteed human right. Similarly, we've been fighting for large investments in childcare and early learning programs. And we've been fighting for paid family and medical leave so that all workers have the ability to take parental leave or to care for a family member when needed. Listen, we have not been able to pass these programs in Congress yet. But because of the work of trade unions in the United States, we have more support for a strong care economy than we have ever seen before. President Biden has actually supported much of this agenda, and that is a huge step forward. In the coming months and years, we intend to organize and build power together to make these programs a reality for all Americans. Protecting and increasing women workers' collective bargaining power is critical to building a strong care economy. Workers in the United States are uniting across sectors to pass legislation that would restore workers' rights to freely and fairly unionize and collectively bargain. The bargaining table is one place where we are strategically positioned to revalue care and improve conditions, compensation, and the climate of care for unionized workers. In fact, it's because of our industrial power that nurses in the United States were able to win a landmark regulation to protect the health and safety of healthcare workers during the pandemic. From the first signs of the beginning of the pandemic, unions in the US started fighting for an occupational safety and health standard that would require our employers to protect healthcare workers from exposure to COVID-19. Together, we ran an extensive campaign. And in June 2021, the Biden administration issued an emergency temporary standard to protect us. I just want to take a moment to praise the incredible work that the AFL-CIO and its affiliate unions did together to make this historic victory possible. It was a true historic example of how care workers can leverage collective power to make sure that care workers are healthy and safe on the job. It is also a reminder, though, that we must continue to formalize the care economy. With so many unpaid, unrecognized jobs in the care economy, it's difficult to build industrial power. Through formalizing the unpaid parts of the care economy, we will be able to organize collectively to ensure good, safe union jobs for all care workers. Our organizing necessarily must include defending care workers against industry's ongoing efforts to extract their labor for free. In the United States, we need to also continue to focus on organizing women workers in parts of our country where their rights have been gutted by racist and misogynistic right-wing political attacks. But we are also fueled by the vision of an economy that regards care as a public good and benefit to our communities and to democracy. In the US, we're energized in our efforts to organize deep in our communities to continue building the broad-based social movement that will lead us to a country where the care of everyone is prioritized, where care workers are valued and compensated, and where our rights to organize a union and bargain collectively are fully respected. Thank you.
Thank you, Mira, for that insight on the care economy and also our collective power and our need for organizing. Thank you for that. We'd like to go to Duri, if you'd like to take the floor. We'll just pass that same mic over. Just give me a second. In my head, everybody was in order, which is silly. The floor is yours. Go ahead.
Hello. Can you hear me? Okay. Yes. Hi, my name is Dure, and I'm from PWF Pakistan. And Assalamu alaikum from our local language. This is the greetings from Pakistan for all of you. Today is a very important day for me. We all are here to exchange our views and share vision. But believe you me, this is very first time that I'm representing labor women or women from Pakistan from different unions in the World Forum. Today's topic is very close to my heart and around the work I am doing And this is very first time to attend any international conference myself. So forgive me if I say something wrong, or I mean something that is maybe out of the context. So thank you. Thank you. It is indeed a matter of pride that I empowered my skills because of the leadership program being started by the ITUC WIL. And this program brought forward many of the other women in the leadership positions in Pakistan, and they are in the transformation. Women leadership be an important aspect for prosperous nations. I would like to share the minimum facts about the women in Pakistan. Till date, the data shows 93% of the women found workplace harassment every day in their lives. Women face abuse in the workplace and at home, including high rates of rape, murder, attacks, domestic violence, and forced marriages. Preparators have often to enjoy because of the discrimination. They enjoy impunity because of the discrimination. With these minimum facts, we kickstarted our first campaign on C-190 ratification to end GBV with support from ITUC AP and my leadership, and of course my mentors, my global mentors, my local mentors, and our sisters at every layer who assisted and guided us to move forward. I'm thankful to all of them. This is, this is the first time for my organization to start any campaign to eradicate gender-based violence. Within the organization, there was no concept for any tolerance or zero policy for harassment and violence. So this campaign is evolving as a major cultural change within the organization as well. As a trade union, when we say, we mean it, that we should not leave behind any woman. And I feel proud to say that as a trade unionist, I mean it, and I'm sure you all. With all the above challenges, we started with very simple steps, but campaign is evolving with so many good things. As I told you, the culture of entire organization and raising the noise of ratification. Women's Committee has been activated, started, and taking position and leading the campaign first time in the history of Pakistan. And it is by the workers themselves. They are leading the campaigns in Pakistan. This is how now we are starting sharing the power, because that's why I am here too. It is becoming an official campaign now. Government, for the very first time, issued and notified to form a tripartite committee to work for ratification at Punjab level. It is now in the country's action plan. And of course, we're able to develop a redressal mechanism with support from ITUC AP again, because it is the matter to stop violence before it happens. So it is very important to understand these dynamics. We developed zero tolerance policy within our own trade union, and we are educating the other unions also to opt that. We are spreading this campaign to national level, to enterprise level, with awareness on social dialogue, collective bargaining, and freedom of association. To do this, of course, we need support. I called UN and EU to work with women workers and their leadership. Don't give fancy funds to CSOs. We have to lead our campaigns. This is for us. This is building our new women movement. I believe from my journey there, an empowered woman can empower women. And to empower women, we need more will sessions, programs. We need a woman movement behind us in Pakistan. We need to raise our issues, can't we? Let's unite and inspire each other. Let's connect for future of unions for women. We need to achieve this. We have to build strong women movement. The future of the world relates to us. And at the end, I'm thankful to all my sisters at ITUC Global, my sister Sharon Boro, I was literally in shock when I saw on November 1st her last email as a General Secretary. You know, it really makes us cry there, because her letter arrives like anything and women get the seats for everything. So we believe there should be a next seat for the woman in the Secretariat. And my mentor, and I'm thankful to you as well. And thank you all the sisters for the solidarity and giving me strength to present here. And thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Dori, and thank you for sharing that perspective on gender-based violence. It is so much very important, and our commitment always to ratify C-190. Thank you. Next, I'd like to go to Yunea and from CUT in Brazil.
Obrigada, graças. Primeiro, me gostaria, mi língua oficial é português, original, pero vou falar portunhol. Espero que os intérpretes e as intérpretes consigam me traduzir. Primeiro, saludar a todas as mulheres corajosas que saíram de suas casas. Algumas de nós outras estamos sem roupas porque não chegaram as maletas. Pero estamos aqui para lutar em defesa da vida, de mundo melhor para todas as mulheres. Antes de também fazer minha charla, queria dizer que vivimos desde o ano 2013 em meu país uma situação que termina agora, esperamos, 31 de dezembro, com as eleições do companheiro Lula, por mundo melhor, contra o fascismo, contra a direita rabiosa que temos em nosso país. Esperamos que vamos conquistar a juventude que se quedou muito encantada com o fascismo. Então, temos agora que começar todo de novo, desde o golpe contra a primeira mulher presidente elegida em meu país, contra todo o lawfare, todas as coisas malas que hicieron contra de Lula. Quero dizer a ustedes, com a delegação de mulheres que temos acá, que Lula é homem nuestro, é de la gente, está com as mulheres, está com os gays, lesbianas, está com os pueblos negros. Então, podem crer nosotras e que acreditem que Lula é gran líder e que todo que hablam de él, del mal, olvidem, porque eu a garantizo e as companheiras de meu país que estão aqui também garantizam. Bueno, agora vou falar sobre o que me pediram. O tema igualdade de gênero e inclusão para a paz e a democracia. Primeiro que vou poner um pouco os logros que as mulheres de la CUT temos conseguido nos últimos 10 anos e os retos para o futuro próximo. Então, primeiro dizer que a CUT Brasil aprovou a paridade para sua direção no ano 2012 e sua aplicação no ano 2015. Nosso reto, porque ter a paridade não significa que as mulheres estão nos principais postos de poder, ¿sí? ¿Me compreendem? Então, nosso reto agora é qualificar os espaços de direção. A exemplo, elegir uma mulher presidenta da Central no ano 2023. Isso é um desejo de nós em la CUT já há muitos anos, porque quando fomos debater a paridade, fomos nós mulheres conversar com os homens e diziam para nós: mira, não há mulheres suficientes listas para ocupar esses postos. Oi? Hacemos tudo ao mesmo tempo? Conseguimos dar mamar ao bebê, atender o telefone, pagar a conta e conseguimos também empoderar e trabalhar o poder em qualquer lugar onde estejamos, desde que nos permitam. E temos que pelear por isso. Então, pensamos no próximo ano não somente eleger uma mulher como presidenta, mas também os outros postos de poder sempre ocupado por homens. Outra coisa importante que é dizer para vocês que a CUT aprovou no ano onde aprovamos, onde a OIT adoptou o convênio 190, a CUT, depois de um trabalho que tivemos no Congresso no ano 2019, houve alguns desacordos, mas aprovamos um protocolo de combate ao acoso dentro de seus órgãos. Estamos agora, começou a pandemia todo, não conseguimos desenvolver isto, porque, bueno, todos sabem que o que passou a pandemia. As reuniões, a maioria, eram todas de maneira, como se diz, por via Zoom. Agora começamos a ter híbridas e logo esperamos voltar a ter as reuniões presenciais. Então, temos como reto trabalhar este protocolo para que os sindicatos, as federações, confederações que fazem parte da CUT e a própria CUT desenvolve este protocolo, onde as mulheres e homens, alguns, podem estar num ambiente livre de violência e acoso. El año 2023, el próximo año, la Secretaría de la Mujer Trabajadora trabajará con las secretarías de estados y confederaciones para su implementación de este protocolo. Sumado a esto, reforzaremos la campaña por la ratificación del convenio 190 de la OIT, que já entregamos, inclusive, ao companheiro Lula, que queremos este convênio, não somente ratificado, adaptado, pero de hecho que funcione em los locais de trabalho. Também trabalhamos com a questão da igualdade salarial. São dois temas muito caros para as mulheres. Os convênios 100 e 111, que trata sobre a diferença de sueldo, de tratamento, entre nós outras, as mulheres. Então, é um debate que a CUT ha ponido sempre em sua agenda e vamos volver agora mais forte, esperamos, no próximo período. La CUT já ha desenvolvido campanhas, montones, sobre esses dois temas. Entre as propostas de políticas públicas para as mulheres apresentadas ao candidato Lula, há também a igualdade de remuneração, que Lula já ha falado isto, e vamos cobrá-lo forte, entre mulheres e homens, uma demanda assumida em seu programa de governo, como já disse agora. Também a CUT, outra parte também que estamos fazendo, que começamos através de projetos com a FES, a Fundação Frederic Ebert, já fazemos isso há muitos anos, que é treinamento de mulheres. A CUT desenvolve um processo de formação com mulheres enfocado em políticas públicas e negociação coletiva, tendo as mulheres dentro das negociações coletivas. E por la primeira vez, a CUT tem paridade de gênero, permitindo que os machos, os varones, possam estar conosco e mirar como nós trabalhamos. Duas cositas por fim. Para políticas públicas, políticas de cuidado, igualdade salarial, já que estamos falando sobre o trabalho social do cuidado, igualdade salarial, trabalho e emprego e políticas de combate à violência, com políticas enfocadas em territórios e lugares de trabalho, discriminação no trabalho, saúde, etc. Esses são temas de negociação com os gestores públicos que vamos preparar. Estamos já fazendo formação das mulheres para o próximo período. Formação e negociação coletiva, como já falei. Bueno, creio que é todo isto, pero quero, para terminar, já passou meu tempo, dizer que todo isso temos que pelear todo o tempo neste próximo período para que o Brasil consiga de novo volver a ser uma das economias do mundo, onde as pessoas possam comer 3 vezes ao menos por dia, porque a coisa está muito feia em meu país durante a pandemia e durante estes anos de fascismo que vivimos. Pero temos esperança, a América Latina e o mundo tem esperança que vamos volver a sermos felizes, temos direito. Muitas graças.
Gracias, Yunea. Appreciate that insight. Next, we want to hear from Paula from CATP Peru. Excellent. The floor is yours.
Bueno. Buenas tardes con todas. Reciban el saludo de las mujeres trabajadoras de Perú. Para mí es la primera vez que tengo la oportunidad de dirigirme a tantas mujeres poderosas y fuertes. Les comento un poco la realidad del Perú. En el Perú, el empleo de las mujeres se caracteriza por tener condiciones vulnerables y salarios bajos. Así, las mujeres perciben menos ingresos que los varones, siendo la brecha salarial del 29%, El ingreso promedio de la mujer es de $295, mientras que el de los varones $411. Esta brecha es aún mayor cuando se tratan de las mujeres del campo. En ese caso, una mujer percibe el 42% menos que un varón, y todo esto se da en el contexto de que las mujeres realizan el mismo trabajo y bajo las mismas condiciones que los varones. En el año 2017, el Estado peruano emitió una norma que señalaba que prohibía la discriminación remunerativa entre hombres y mujeres, con la finalidad de que se nos permita ejecutar el principio de igual trabajo, igual remuneración. Sobre eso, la CAT ha trabajado bastante y les voy a contar parte de lo que hemos hecho. Se detectó en una de nuestras organizaciones afiliadas, que forma parte del ente recaudador de impuestos, que se habían emitido normas para la emisión de bonos de desempeño anual. Y en estas resoluciones administrativas se señalaba de que la base de cálculo era los días laborables en el año. Pues bien, el ente recaudador tributario no computó en esta base de cálculo los días de maternidad, lo cual ocasionaba de que las mujeres que salían gestando en el año percibieran una menor remuneración respecto de su bono de desempeño anual. La CAT recurrió a diversas instancias, autoridades, entidades públicas del Estado peruano, como el Ministerio de la Mujer, la Defensoría del Pueblo, el Ministerio de Trabajo, y todas ellas concluyeron de que existía una abierta discriminación. Luego de ello, presentamos una reclamación por el convenio 111 contra el Estado peruano, el cual nos dio la razón. Y luego de mucho batallar, en el año 2018 se consiguió que el ente recaudador tributario de Perú reconociera esta vulneración y procediera al cambio normativo. Esto fue el inicio de una gran batalla, porque esta situación de discriminación respecto a los días de embarazo no solamente se daba en entidades públicas, sino también en las empresas que repartían utilidades. En esas empresas tampoco se consideraban los días de pre y postnatal, y posteriormente conseguimos que se modificara la ley donde se señalara expresamente de que estos días no deberían de ser disminuidos del cómputo anual para que las mujeres tengan unas utilidades completas. Por otro lado, la CAT ha trabajado en el grupo impulsor de la ratificación del convenio 190, y en junio de este año hemos logrado su ratificación. Asimismo, se está efectuando la incidencia política ante la Comisión del Trabajo del Congreso de la República para la aprobación del proyecto de ley sobre creación del sistema de cuidados, así como la realización de campañas de difusión sobre responsabilidades de cuidado por parte de los integrantes de la familia. Yo he sido electa cerca de 2 meses en la CAT. La CAT, si bien es cierto, sus estatutos no señalan de que tiene que haber una presencia femenina fuerte, hoy tenemos por voluntad de nuestras organizaciones afiliadas el 40% de mujeres en órganos de dirección. Y esperamos dentro de algunos meses ya ponerlo en nuestros estatutos, porque nos vamos a una reforma estatutaria. ¿Cuáles son nuestro plan de trabajo? Estamos promoviendo la modificación normativa que permita la participación de las organizaciones sindicales en los comités paritarios para determinar que la política salarial resulte equitativa. Estamos incidiendo en la creación por parte del Ministerio de Trabajo en la certificación de la igualdad salarial, tanto en el sector privado como en el público. Contribuimos con nuestras organizaciones afiliadas en la remisión de cláusulas de género, de respeto de responsabilidades familiares compartidas para nuestros pliegos de reclamos, y contribuimos con campañas de difusión y sensibilización dentro de nuestras organizaciones afiliadas. Gracias.
Gracias. Very important work, and I love how you're widening that lens to make sure unions are influencing that discussion around not just the hourly wage, but that whole picture. Such great work. Jyoti, I'd like to pass the floor to you.
Good afternoon, brothers and sisters. I'm here to share with you Seva's perspective on universal gender-responsive protection system. Let me share with you that our union have completed 50 years recently. Since inception, we are organizing and advocating for the universal gender-responsive protection system for the women workers in the informal economy. So this subject is very, very important to us. The need of the universal gender-responsible was social protection system, and it was much felt in COVID crisis. According to one of the survey carried out by us, only 1/3 of our members had received the Social Security benefit because the women workers were nowhere registered and there was no database of the informal workers of women. Our late founder, Sri Ila Bhatt, strongly believed that economic freedom is the second freedom for the women workers. We believe that well-designed social protection systems can narrow gender gaps in poverty rates, enhance women's income security and access to income, and provide a lifeline to poor and vulnerable women workers and their family. We believe that poverty can be reduced only if the women workers have work security, income security, social security, and food security. This can be achieved only if the women workers have three necessities, that is food, clothes, and shelter, and three services, that is banking, healthcare, and education. We at SEVA consider these necessities and services as core of gender protection responsive system, and all our activities and campaigns revolve under it. SEVA over last 2 decades have invested a lot in the social protection, both financially, technically, and through human resources. Our healthcare centers, childcare centers, insurance, and programs on vaccination and medical care at doorsteps are a great example to show that if women workers are organized, they can do amazing works in the social protection. These systems are set and designed in such a way that they address the needs of our women workers members. The foundation of social protection was led in SEVA in the early 80s in one of the tobacco growing and processing district from where I am coming, because I am also a tobacco worker. When members started asking for a solution to a childcare issue so they could go out and work, SEVA started childcare centers while they went out to earn a livelihood for their families. What started as an important to daycare center soon transferred into a full-fledged professional childcare services operated and managed by all women's cooperative. For us, it was a comprehensive care economy framework which further led to the creation of livelihood opportunities within. SEVA Bank is the second illustration of the gender-responsive microeconomic model of SEVA. The history of SEVA Bank is very interesting. Vendors who were self-employed workers were one of the first trade group that SEVA organized. In the early meetings organized, the issue shared by the women was regarding capital they need in the morning to buy the vegetables. And they were paying 10% of daily interest to buy the vegetables. Thus, they never came out from the debts. They came forward with the idea that why can't we have our own bank, which caters specially to our needs. This laid a foundation of SEVA Bank. Currently, it's a full-fledged bank operative as per the guidelines of RBI and catering to more than 5 million workers. Secondly, life and disability insurance are an essential social protection for the women workers. This led to the starting of the SEVA Insurance Cooperative as a microfinance initiative. All the products and schemes offered by SEVA Insurance is according to the needs of women workers and their trades. One of the trade-specific insurance scheme was for the construction workers because they faced many accidents in their work. The employer contractor provided them with the primary medical care and left them, and workers could not go for work. They lose their daily wages and it becomes difficult for them to run the household. We started a medical insurance for them. The scheme took care of their medical expenses, but also paid them 50% of the wages of the days they could not go to work. We also have developed the health centers as a part of gender-responsive social protection system. These healthcare centers address the health-related issues of our members. We have barefoot nurses who run the centers and assist the in-house doctors in dispensing the medicine and treating NCDs. These centers were really boon to us in current pandemic crisis. Our trained barefoot leaders provided health as well as psychological assistance in the areas of the work. For us, it is the best example of the care economy during such tough times when physical movement is restricted. It is pro-employment initiative of Seva as it creates employment opportunities for second generation of Seva. We at Seva started to have social dialogues with the government of the Social Security for the informal sector since inception. Seva way back suggested for the umbrella legislation for the informal sector workers, and as the result, the Unorganized Workers Social Security Act 2008 was enacted. At the state levels, we negotiated to constitute the welfare boards. It was not very successful because of lack of funds provided to Social Security. Long-term investment is needed to provide Social Security to the workers. The need is to see these investments as productive, which help in increasing the productivity of the workers and thus national income rather than burden to the economy. Thus, our approach of Social Security starts from the local level, moves to the state level, and adopted and replicated at the national level. We also advocated for the protection of the livelihood for the street vendors. As a result, the National Act for Protecting, Regularizing their livelihood and providing social protection was enacted unanimously by both House of Parliament in 2004. Lastly, I would like to lay stress that there is vast digital divide in the world and poor and vulnerable women workers of the informal sectors do not have smartphones or computer, and internet connectivity is also low. Therefore, workers find it difficult to register, renew, or access the Social Security online. Seva helps in online registration, renewal, and accessing the Social Security. One of our representation is that there should be manual physical filling of the forms should be considered along with the online in the countries, especially where there is a vast digital divide. Lastly, from the lesson learned, we need to strategize so that social protection reaches to all informal economy workers and is declared as their fundamental right for this. One is value-based organizing is must, very important. Strong collective bargaining and strategizing is a must for social protection. There should be women participation to frame gender-responsive universal social protection, especially for maternity benefit, childcare, and equal pay. Very important is the database of the informal sector trades and workers should be created. There should be 4 common social security schemes, that is healthcare, childcare, education, maternity, old age pension, and life and disability insurance for all workers in the informal economy. And other social security should be framed according to the characteristic of the trades. Lastly, the current COVID crisis has shown us the universal and basic social security is most essential, and we together need to have social dialogues with all our stakeholders for it. Most importantly, investment in the social protection should be seen as a barrier to the economic rather than burden to the national economy, as it enhances the earning capacity of the workers and it speeds up the local economy. Thank you.
Thanks, Jyoti. We'd like to go to Lebo next, if you want to take the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for this invitation. I'm very honored to be on a panel with such amazing women who are doing a great job in the trade union. I'm not here by myself. I'm here with the president of COSATU, re-elected President Zingiswa Losi, unopposed. Her military background is what we rely on to put the men in check. our gender coordinator and the champion for the work that happens around gender in COSATU, Comrade Gertrude Ntweni. She really puts us in line when we don't apply the gender lens. So just to get to the topic that I'll be talking about ensuring a gender transformative just transition, and this is actually quite important in the South African context. Just to mention that the just transition as a concept, and we were talking about this last week in our deliberations at COP, is that the trade union movement has really done the work to put this work on the map. It's definitely the work of the trade union, more broadly the ITUC, to make sure that indeed this work bears expression and is embedded in the general conversations that we now have in terms of climate and climate justice and making sure that we achieve a just transition. Now we have a further task to achieve, and this is around how do we make it gender transformative, which is sometimes a subject that really does lack in the discussions. Now, maybe just to bring it to the South African context, South Africa and Africa more broadly is greatly vulnerable to climate change. Women are probably the most vulnerable in this situation. This is because, particularly in the South African experience, women are placed and are more in terms of population numbers in the rural areas, and this is because of our history in our country and how labor migration has resulted in more women being left in rural areas. As a result, our rural areas are particularly floodplain areas. So as a result, when flooding does happen, houses are washed away, women and children are particularly affected and displaced as a result of those natural phenomena. Food prices, when they increase as a result of drought or extreme weather patterns, this affects women more as opposed to other gender groupings. This is because women are generally responsible for consumption in the household. And just generally, as a result of women's care responsibility in the household, when somebody is sick or when family members are sick or children are sick as a result of flooding, which results in waterborne diseases, it is women again who need to add on an extra burden of taking care of family members over and above having to work a 9-to-5 job. So indeed, this is a woman's issue, and we need to apply an additional lens when looking into this issue. When we look at the just transition concept as COSATU, we do realize that this means deep transformative change for the majority of our people, particularly for women. It is unfortunate that we do see the underrepresentation of women in the energy sector. This is a worldwide phenomenon. Globally, women hold around 1/5 of the jobs in oil, gas and the coal industry, and less of 1/3 of the jobs in the renewable sector are apportioned to women. So there's significant underrepresentation in this particular sector. So a lot of things need to be done to increase opportunities for women, particularly in the new renewable energy sector that is going to come about. And there's definitely opportunities for women to receive mass employment in these particular sectors, because we do see the opportunity for women to be employed in these sectors. Now, what's going to be key to ensure that women can participate meaningfully in these sectors is if we adapt the sectors so that they are appealing for women to work in. So the nice thing about our discussions and deliberations around the just transition is that we do get to reimagine the energy sector and reimagine the energy sector workplaces for them to be friendly and attractive for women. So I know we use the word reimagine quite a lot, but really what we're saying is implement the things that trade unions have been saying you should implement all this time. So these relate to the fact that we need to get daycare facilities in these sectors where women can be able to balance their jobs as well as care responsibilities, especially of children. The reduction of hours of work. So women who are in the sector usually have to experience huge hours at work because of site and having to be on site all the time. We usually make the joke in our office that it's not because we're millennials, but there really is no need for anybody to work 9 hours in a day. There's no productivity gain from it. So we really need to look at achieving a 40-day hour work week and the reduction of work hours, as well as provide career development for women workers who have minor children. We often hear of the stories how when women are pregnant, they are often looked for reskilling and upskilling opportunities as well as promotion in the workplace. But secondly, how they cannot take advantage of these opportunities, especially when they have to look after minor children. One of the ways that we are looking at this work is that COSATU is developing guidelines on prioritizing women in a just transition and how we provide opportunities for women in a just transition by adapting the workplaces and making it more attractive for women. Unfortunately, jobs in the renewable energy sector are unorganized, so this is an additional challenge for us in the trade union movement to make sure that we can organize these women and we can create opportunities for them, especially in the just transition, so that they can take advantage of opportunities, particularly in terms of employment. My time is up. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your leadership and being a part of this panel. Next, we'll go to Ragnhild. The floor is yours. Get you a mic. Perfect.
Thank you. Dear sisters, my name is Ragnhild. I'm president of UNIO Norway. And it is a great honor to address this distinguished audience. In my intervention, I will focus on what we do to provide equitable access as to lifelong learning in general, and also focus on the gender digital gap in particular. UNIO's mission is to support the interests of our affiliates. One of our main tasks is to provide access to skills, development, training, and lifelong learning. Our tripartite model is a useful tool in this matter. UNIO sets up courses and upskilling activities such as work environment and occupational health and safety. But upskilling is first and foremost a responsibility for our affiliates. I will give some examples from 3 female-dominated affiliates. The Nurses Union is our second largest. They run a number of courses, extensive seminars, network gatherings, lectures, and knowledge-based updates. The union is on one side focusing on the organization dimension. On the other side, the union is providing upskilling on professional issues, such as what methods should be at hand when meeting migrants and handling their health situation, or how to meet and help people in crisis. In addition, there are a number of courses on innovation and new methods within specific disciplines. Our biggest union, the teachers, is also female-dominated. Their courses and upskilling initiatives focus on hardcore trade union issues like wages, working time, and pension schemes. And on the other side, on adapting to new professional challenges in education. Another affiliated union to be mentioned is the Union of Occupational Therapists. Most of the courses are related to innovation and new ways of improving the professional service. They emphasize heavily on what is called welfare technology, new equipment and new methods. One of the success factors is related to tailor-made courses and a module-based system on digital platforms. Many of the courses and upskilling initiatives are on digital platforms. Our unions organizing health workers want to be in the forefront when it comes to understanding, using, and developing digital products. For example, is one of the largest events in the Nurses Union, a technology conference. The conference will address technology as a tool in the practice of nursing. The overall aim is to improve the digital competence among nurses. An essential principle for our policy is that education and upskilling should be free of charge. This should be financed by the authorities and the employers. Dear sisters, Norway is a wealthy country. Part of this wealth is based on natural resources, but the increase in women's participation in the workforce is far more important to the nation's wealth than the entire oil wealth, both raised from the 1970s. And I believe there is a common consensus that knowledge is the new oil. Investment in education is the most important factor when it comes to participation in working life, in social life, and in taking part in society, and the most important investment to attain gender equality, to close the gender gap. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, and thank you to all of the panelists for sharing the work that's being done and for being here. And I know you could speak all day on this important work, but we all look up to you in the work you do. So thank you so much for being here, and please give them all a big hand of appreciation as they head back to their chairs in the audience. We do want to make some time now for interventions from the floor. If anybody wants to make comment, we are going to request that we keep it to 1 minute. There are 2 mics here, one in this aisle and one over here. So if you want to line up to the mics, we're going to keep it to 1 minute. I'll let you know when 1 minute is up so we can hear from as many people. And just to put it in perspective, I think we're going to have time for about maybe 7 or 8 people. So if you're the 15th in line, we probably will not get to you in this part. So please, if you'd like to make your way, we will like to hear. So I see, perfect, I see someone here in house left. So please, if you don't mind introducing yourself and sharing, and I'll let you know when we're at 50 seconds, okay?
Thank you. Diana Holland from the TUC in the United Kingdom. Really pleased to be here. So inspiring to hear of the achievements. But I just wanted to raise from all of our experiences with how women have been impacted by the pandemic and everything else that's happening. We have to find ways of building in protection for our gains. Looking back over 40 years, I see we win and then it's under threat again. We have to protect those gains. Thank you.
Thank you. Great point. We'll go to the speaker on this mic over here.
Ben, voilà, j'avais préparé tout un discours, mais je vais me tenir aux 50 secondes parce que pas seulement on a expliqué tous les droits de la femme sur le terrain de travail, mais aussi dans le monde, et on constate qu'ils sont de plus en plus menacés. Donc j'ai quelque chose à vous dire qui a été dit par Simone de Beauvoir, c'est pas moi qui a expliqué cela. N'oubliez jamais qu'il suffira d'une crise politique, économique ou religieuse pour que les droits de femmes soient remis en question. Ces droits ne sont jamais acquis. Donc vous devrez rester vigilante votre vie durant. Et qu'est-ce que ça veut dire au fait, chères sœurs et chers camarades? C'est la lutte féministe, le combat syndical qu'on doit mener tous les jours, au quotidien, davantage les femmes, parce que c'est ensemble on est plus fort. Et si on veut réellement faire la différence sur le terrain de travail, et faire la différence dans la société où on maintient le respect pour les femmes, on le voit aux États-Unis, on le voit en Iran, on le voit en Ukraine. C'est à nous de mener ce combat et je sais qu'à travers de cette conférence, c'est possible. Merci bien.
Merci. The floor is yours.
Buenas tardes, Ligia Inés Alzate Arias de la CUT Colombia. Bien, hay 3 puntos que quiero resaltar porque en mi país también hemos avanzado y es la economía del cuidado. Hoy la presentamos en una agenda, un gobierno cercano para la política pública del país, que sea un sistema nacional del cuidado. Y tenemos una experiencia en la ciudad de Bogotá. 2, en la agenda también está la formalización del empleo, porque uno de los aspectos importantes a atender hoy es el retroceso tan grande que tuvimos en el empleo en el país, pero se aumentó muchísimo más la informalidad y hoy tenemos como política en la agenda la formalización laboral. Y 3, en la economía del cuidado, nuestra política es reducción, reconocimiento y redistribución para aumentar la democracia en nuestro país y la erradicación de la violencia y tener lugares libres de violencia con la campaña del convenio 190, aún sin ratificar en Colombia.
Gracias. Gracias. Floor is yours.
Gracias. Diana Gómez de la CTC Colombia. En el mismo sentido de la compañera que acaba de intervenir, en cuanto al tema de la economía del cuidado, ha sido importante iniciar con el reconocimiento, de manera que en las cuentas nacionales y en el sistema estadístico colombiano se logró cuantificar que si se tuviera en cuenta el valor económico del trabajo del cuidado no remunerado, representaría un 20% del Producto Interno Bruto. Es un primer paso para continuar hacia el Sistema Nacional de Cuidado. Quería llamar la atención, o me llamó la atención más bien, y reforzar lo dicho por la compañera de Noruega, en el sentido que cuando se habla de recalificación o de capacitarse para unas nuevas labores, es importante que los empleadores y los gobiernos permitan esa recalificación en cualquier otra área profesional y no necesariamente en la que se estaba laborando. Gracias.
Gracias.
Hi, I am Susalisi from Confederation of Free Trade Unions of India. Thanks for the wonderful presentation. And I see that we are looking at the next World Congress wherein we will have 50% responsibility to carry forward. And I also look at that in every trade union, that participation of the women has to increase. It has to become 50%. And from there to the politics, wherein the decision making also has to be there, wherein union has to play a role. So I consider that these initiatives that we have taken, we need to have a monetary mechanism whereby we consistently take on, and 50% of the responsibilities are taken over by women so that there can be a change. Thank you.
Thank you. The floor is yours.
Ana Soto, Central Así Venezuela. Las mujeres somos el motor invisible de la economía del mundo. Por eso hoy felicito la cuarta conferencia, ya que nos permite unirnos, juntarnos, vernos y compartir estas buenas prácticas, ya que venimos de 2 conferencias virtuales, hoy nos estamos viendo todas en presencia. ¿Qué tenemos que hacer para que ese documento no quede solamente en un documento letra muerta? Los resultados de la cuarta conferencia tenemos que llevarlo a las bases. Tenemos que debatirlo en todos los sindicatos para que el próximo año tengamos unos resultados efectivos, tanto en la economía del cuidado, en la ratificación del convenio 190 y en todo lo que nos hemos planteado las mujeres a nivel mundial este año. Muchísimas gracias.
Gracias. Go ahead.
Colombia, hoy en Colombia hay un gobierno diferente, gobierno del cambio, un nuevo presidente, Petro, y una mujer muy valiosa afro, que es Francia Márquez. Y le apostamos en estos días, hace unos 15, 20 días, a una ley de la paz total. De manera que en Colombia, hoy más que nunca, defendemos las mujeres la paz. Las mujeres somos defensoras de la paz porque damos vida, porque no queremos que nuestros hijos, hijas, esposos, familiares, se los lleve la guerra. Por eso somos defensoras de la paz en el mundo y en Colombia. Y segundo, en la vicepresidencia también acaba de presentar un proyecto que es muy novedoso y que lo hay en países como Argentina, que estuvimos en Buenos Aires con la CCA, y es el Ministerio de la Igualdad. Vamos por el Ministerio de la Igualdad y por la ratificación del convenio 190 de la OIT. Gracias.
Gracias. Yes, gracias. Okay, thank you to the sisters. We're going to take this as our last speaker, so everybody else, I would ask that you save your comments till the next time, but we'll allow you to take the floor and then we'll move on.
Moi, je suis Asma Ouba, je viens de la Guinée-Conakry, je représente le secrétaire général de l'ONSCLG, qui est l'Organisation nationale des syndicats libres de Guinée. Je suis la présidente du réseau africain des travailleurs domestiques et hôtelières. Moi, je vais m'accentuer sur la syndicalisation et la solidarité, parce qu'on dit la solidarité, c'est l'un des slogans d'abord du syndicat. Et toutes les femmes qui sont ici, nous sommes toutes des femmes qui portent la voix des sans-voix. Donc si nous sommes solidaires, nous parlons le même langage, nous allons déplacer des montagnes. Donc je pense qu'avec cette conférence et puis le congrès, nous allons augmenter beaucoup de choses dans l'intérêt général des travailleurs. Merci.
Merci. Thank you very much. I will take this opportunity to pass the floor over to Sharon, who is going to bring us through our next session, which will be very important. I can barely see with the lights, sorry, apologize. Excellent.
So I've got an exceptional job now, and that's to ask Liz, Anal and Anne to come to the stage. These are three incredible leaders, and we're going to talk about what it takes to build a transformative agenda. So do we have Liz? Yes, yes, and we need Anne. And you're here. Okay. Let me move over here. Anywhere? Yep. Pick a seat, pick a microphone. So these women need no introduction to you, I know, but we have in fact got we've got limited time, but I always like to hear from women themselves, because when women are leaders, they actually can make the difference. And it's the way in which they lead, they influence the agenda, they set out to make a difference in the lives of other women. So I'm going to start with Liz, who indeed probably doesn't need any introduction to any of you, but Liz is the president of the AFL-CIO. She's a great friend and an extraordinary leader, and if you've watched her touring from state to state to state in the context of the recent midterm elections, you know that she's got to be exhausted. But just a few minutes, and really the question is, you know, how do you create a transformative agenda for women, Liz? What strikes you as the best story we can tell each other?
Well, hello, everyone. It's so good to be here. It's so good to see you. And I just want to say, first of all, thank you to Sharon, because in terms of creating a visionary path forward for women leaders in the global labor movement, Sharon has been absolutely a mentor, a friend to all of us here in this room. And so I just want to say thank you to Sharon. I'm still in denial that she's retiring. But I came up through my union, the electrical workers, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, a sister in the Brotherhood, and always knew that there was a space and a place for women that along the way we had to fight for, because there weren't a lot of women in my union. And so when I came into the AFL-CIO, the federation of 58 unions, I knew that as a woman leader, that it was part of my responsibility to open doors for that next generation of leadership for women in our movement. And so it's spaces like this, I will just say, that are so important for networking, for sharing stories, for the best practices and learning from each other, that are so incredibly important. And I think that's one of the pieces that I would just say, having a women's committee of the ITUC to generate a platform so that we are having our voice in the Congress. You know, having leaders like Siobhan to be in rooms and bringing the women's perspective to all of these tables is so incredibly important. I will just say, in the United States, women are half the workforce, and we are almost half the labor movement. Out of 12 million working people in the labor movement, we have nearly 6.5 million women. And we are the largest working women's organization in the United States. But not many people see us that way in the US, because there's an old stereotype that unions are run by men, they are for men, and they only care about issues relating to men. So that has been our struggle as women leaders, to find our voice and power within our movement. And I think the pandemic gave us an opportunity, because women were on the front lines as essential workers, leading in healthcare and, you know, at the grocery stores and in transport and so many places, that we were finally seen in a different way. And women have found their voices in the United States. Women are rising up and organizing in new and powerful ways outside the labor movement. So what I would say in terms of my role in the position I'm in now is to connect the women outside our movement with the women inside the movement, and show all women that the AFL-CIO is a place for women and their needs and the issues they care about, and a place to, you know, advocate for change. And we're finally seeing the change in how people see unions like never before. And so we have the Biden administration, which is the most pro-union administration in our lifetimes. We have the public now pro-union. 70% of Americans now approve of unions, which is amazing. And we have working people rising up and organizing. You've seen Starbucks, you've seen Amazon, you've seen healthcare workers. Amira was just talking about, you know, nurses in the South organizing. You have grad student researchers at the University of California on strike right now, led by women, because they have been sexually harassed in their jobs in order to advance. So they have said, no, enough, that we need a union to bring our voice forward. So women are leading the strikes, women are leading the organizing campaigns, and so now it's up to us to walk the walk and say, what is the trade union movement in the United States going to do to attract more women, especially in the growing fields of our industries and sectors, predominantly will be female, women of color, to show that the union movement is a movement for them. And I would just say that the one thing I'll leave you with is that we have within our control as women leaders to make the change around us. And so the first thing that I did coming into this job is to say, what can we do at the AFL-CIO headquarters to make this a place that is more forward-looking and looking through a gender lens? Well, we can actually appoint more women in positions of power in our federation. And so Kathy Feingold, who's right here in front, we have our chief of staff is a woman, our deputy chief of staff, we have heads of departments. Women have taken over the AFL-CIO.
Whoa.
And it's been a quiet storm. Someone is going to wake up one day and realize it, but women have taken over the AFL-CIO. And so we can walk the walk on the change. We have our state AFL-CIO bodies in 50 states in the United States. Also, now historic numbers of women coming into leadership in those bodies as well. And I think the reason is because if you can see it, you can be it. And so that's what my hope is that we continue to open those doors to not pull the ladder up behind us, but make it a ladder that everyone can access and take their rightful place at the table.
Fantastic. And amazing. To watch Liz in action is really a joy. So thank you, Liz, for everything you do. But the woman sitting next to her, Amal El Emery, is indeed a dear friend of mine. We've known each other for more than a decade. She's an extraordinary leader from Morocco with the UMT, but she's also a global leader. She represents us on the governing body of the ILO, and she's one of those people who can walk into a community and people know that she cares about them, that she can make a difference. She is, in fact, the embodiment of an incredible woman leader. So, Amal, I know you've done a lot in a difficult culture. You know, let's be honest. And an Arabic, nation, which, a Muslim nation with mixed population, but with Arabic and French competing for each other because of colonial history. So Amal navigates all of that and actually does inspire women, but more than women, she inspires young people. So Amal, how do we keep opening the doors for women, for young people, particularly young women, to take on the leadership positions of the unions?
Merci beaucoup, Sharon, pour tout ce que tu as dit à mon propos et puis à propos de toutes ces femmes dirigeantes qui sont là, qui viennent donc un petit peu de toutes les régions du monde. Je peux dire aussi à ton égard que tu as pu féminiser aussi les structures de la CSI. C'était pas évident. Tu as dû te battre avec aussi les anciens disons, dirigeants pour pouvoir imposer des femmes. Et ça, c'est à ton honneur, Sharon. J'aimerais quand même parler, avant de répondre à ta question, du fait qu'effectivement, c'est très difficile, encore plus difficile, compte tenu de la culture sociale, religieuse, sociale, etc., de percer dans le mouvement syndical qui est très, très, très masculinisé. Mais bon, on se ferait son chemin en militant et en redoublant d'engagement et de ténacité. J'ai préparé, dans ma tête, mon intervention compte tenu du contexte actuel de la pandémie notamment et donc de la crise qu'elle a engendrée pour les femmes et qui rend de plus en plus ce leadership difficile, ce leadership dont on a vraiment besoin actuellement pour affronter les défis à venir. Bon, nous connaissons tous ces effets disproportionnés sur les femmes, cette sortie massive du marché du travail après donc, la crise pandémique qui a évolué vers une crise économique et une crise énergétique maintenant, avec une diminution du pouvoir d'achat, avec vraiment beaucoup de problèmes pour les femmes, le sous-emploi, la perte de revenus, les femmes qu'on considère maintenant comme les déçues du marché du travail après ce qui se passe. L'élargissement du pan de l'informel, parce que les femmes, une fois sorties du marché du travail, elles font quand même preuve d'initiative et de créativité pour assurer à leur famille des revenus. Pour le Maroc, la crise, en fait, n'a fait qu'exacerber la situation des femmes qui souffraient déjà d'une faiblesse structurelle quant à leur participation au marché de l'emploi. Est-ce que vous savez que avant les années 2000, on faisait mieux en termes de participation au marché de l'emploi que maintenant? On était dans des taux de presque 30%, alors qu'on est à peine à 20% maintenant. 8 femmes sur 10 restent en dehors du marché de travail. La non-reconnaissance, à cause de la non-reconnaissance, entre autres, du potentiel que renferment ces femmes qui restent dans l'informel ou qui sont inactives. C'est pour ça qu'on a besoin, Sharan, de redresser, d'inverser cette tendance. Et comment faire pour que les femmes deviennent de vrais acteurs du développement? Au Maroc, on assiste par exemple à une certaine institutionnalisation des droits des femmes avec des programmes et des mécanismes qui ont été mis en place pour tenir compte donc, des mécanismes de discrimination positive. Mais ça reste, si c'est nécessaire, ça reste quand même insuffisant dans la mesure où ça procède d'une vision beaucoup plus mécanique de la gouvernance et non pas d'un réel processus de changement qui impactera au mieux la vie des femmes et la vie des travailleuses. Le leadership transformatif ou transformationnel procède justement de cette volonté de changer les choses en faveur d'une société plus inclusive et en faveur d'un marché du travail plus équitable pour les femmes. Alors, parce que plus on a de femmes dirigeantes dans tous les pans de la société, dans les gouvernements, dans les parlements, dans la société civile, dans nos syndicats, eh ben, nos revendications auront plus d'écho et nous aurons donc des alliés un petit peu partout pour faire de ces femmes justement des acteurs de développement et pour justement impulser, pour impacter les politiques publiques en faveur des femmes, mais pour être là aussi au moment de leur mise en œuvre. C'est important pour nos syndicats parce que justement en renforçant ce leadership des femmes, le leadership au féminin, nous déstabilisons également les fondements des inégalités qui sont des causes structurelles qui freinent la progression des femmes sur le marché du travail. Mais pour cela, il faut des stratégies. Il faut des stratégies et c'est en partie la réponse à Sharan. Comment faire? Il faut des stratégies intégrées qui tiennent compte de plusieurs volets. Nous devons, jusqu'à présent, nous avons pu, grâce aux campagnes de la CSI, grâce à tout ce qu'on a pu entreprendre, entre autres depuis 2014, tout à l'heure on parlait de la campagne Comptez avec nous, on a pu progresser en termes de représentativité des femmes dans les postes de décision. D'abord, de représentativité des femmes en général, et puis dans les postes de décision. Mais ces acquis sont maintenant menacés à cause de la Covid, à cause de la sortie donc, des femmes du marché de travail, même si c'est en train de reprendre un petit peu. Donc, il va falloir redoubler d'efforts. Il va falloir redoubler d'efforts. Et donc, au Maroc, enfin à l'UMT, parce que comme on a toujours été consciente de cette nécessité de changer les choses en faveur des femmes, nous avons, par exemple, fait revivre une structure pour les femmes qui est beaucoup plus qu'un comité des femmes et qui date des années 60 et qui a le mérite d'encadrer non seulement des femmes travailleuses, mais également des femmes au foyer. Nous avons bien sûr conservé tous les mécanismes de discrimination positive pour lutter contre le plafond de verre et les parois de verre. Et ça nous permet d'identifier à chaque fois des femmes militantes, des femmes qui ont un potentiel d'être leaders, qui ont des attributs de leadership transformatif, c'est-à-dire un pouvoir d'influence, un pouvoir de mobiliser les troupes, de mobiliser les femmes derrière elles, et pas que les femmes, mais aussi de mobiliser les travailleurs qui ont donc un engagement et un attribut également de commandement. On renforce leur capacité par la formation, on les met dans les équipes de négociation, on les met également, on les pousse à être dans ce qu'on appelle les institutions représentatives du personnel, les comités d'entreprise, les comités d'hygiène et de sécurité. On utilise la communication pour mettre un petit peu la lumière sur leur action, le rendre plus visible. On les intègre, on fait beaucoup de campagnes, donc je donne des exemples, la campagne de ratification de la Convention 190 par exemple, on les met dans les équipes de négociation et puis on profite aussi des possibilités qui nous sont données par la loi pour les mettre ailleurs que dans les syndicats. Par exemple, nous avions négocié pour qu'il y ait une parité au niveau de la Chambre des conseillers du Parlement et on a une parfaite parité au niveau de la représentation au Sénat, l'équivalent du Sénat. Pour l'heure, nous avons 4 femmes et 4 hommes. On profite également des coalitions qui nous permettent aussi de faire avancer la cause des femmes. La coalition, par exemple, je donne comme exemple la coalition 190 créée à l'initiative de femmes syndicalistes. Et je rends hommage à Touria, que vous connaissez, beaucoup parmi vous la connaissent. Et aussi à l'initiative de l'UPFM, notre structure des femmes. Et nous avons initié un plaidoyer en faveur de la ratification de la Convention 190. L'UPFM est également membre fondateur de la coalition Dignité et droits des femmes avec un champ plus large qui concerne cette fois-ci la région MENA. Beaucoup de collectifs de la parité maintenant, des alliances dans le rural. Les résultats, bon, on est dans la moyenne des statistiques qui sont données par la CSI. Mais nous avons réussi à avoir plusieurs dirigeantes dans des secteurs difficiles. Par exemple, dans l'agriculture, il y a beaucoup de femmes parmi les travailleuses agricoles qui travaillent dans des conditions d'exploitation et dans des conditions aussi d'insécurité. Il y a eu beaucoup d'accidents de travail, beaucoup d'accidents de trajet, etc. On a des femmes qui sont capables de mobiliser. Nous avons, par exemple, réussi à avoir des femmes dirigeantes dans un secteur presque informel, le secteur de la promotion nationale. C'est un secteur qui travaille pour les collectivités locales, qui fait un travail de proximité dans beaucoup d'unités, telles que le secteur des soins, le secteur de la santé, etc., mais qui n'ont même pas de statut juridique clair. Ils n'ont même pas de contrat de travail et ils ne sont pas payés au SMIC, les femmes et les hommes, mais il est fortement féminisé, ce secteur. Donc, je te dis, Sharon, par exemple, ce secteur est un bon candidat pour la formalisation et pour justement avoir un travail décent dans le secteur des soins. Nous allons y travailler et nous allons réussir. Nous sommes sur la bonne voie. Je ne dis pas que c'est la révolution, mais je dis qu'on arrive à préserver les acquis en matière de représentativité et nous allons persévérer. Je dirais également, pour finir, parce que apparemment j'ai dû épuiser mon temps, je dirais que au rythme actuel, ça ne va pas. On doit tous et toutes redoubler d'efforts pour qu'il y ait plus de leadership transformationnel. Et et qu'on puisse démentir cette prévision qui vraiment qui n'est pas à notre qui ne rend pas service à notre combat, rester 140 ans avant d'arriver à une vraie parité entre les femmes et les hommes en matière de leadership au niveau de nos organisations. Je vous remercie.
Thank you, Amal. So many issues. You know, the equality for women in a situation like this, plus, of course, the informality and the need to formalise jobs. But also I can tell you that Amal has taken this to the Parliament itself because she sits in the Senate and she absolutely pursues dialogue, social dialogue around these critical issues. So we thank you for your work. We urge you to maintain the efforts to mobilise women and to affect the policy, but we're very grateful for the work you do. And you, of course, Anne Vermorgen is indeed the National Secretary of the CSC, ACV in Belgium. And there are, you know, many strong women in your union, but I also know that this hasn't always been easy. And I know that running a union as a General Secretary has serious challenges. So how do you maintain an authority that allows us to make sure that the union doesn't close its doors for women, that there isn't the pushback we're seeing in many areas? Tell us your story, Anne.
Yeah, thank you, Sharon, for the opportunity, and dear sisters. For me, it's important that when you want a democratic and equal society, then it's necessary that women continue to take their place at all levels of our trade union organizations. And it's also important that women are visible in our organizations so that they can trigger the other women, also young women, to take the step and to take responsibility and also to be activists and to take leadership. That's very important. Women need examples. And we all here in this room, we are examples for many young women. And that we must know. For me, it's also, if we want to increase the participation of women in our trade unions at all levels, we need a framework. And so we did that also in our trade union. You need a framework. And for me, the key was our Congress in 2002. That was the key. Because we took significant decisions regarding the representation and participation of women in its trade union activities. And these decisions have been confirmed at several CSC congresses in 2006, 2010, 2015. You must repeat it frequently to make your point. And so it was decided that a realistic global national action plan with results obligation is needed to ensure also the representation of at least 1/3 women in the governing bodies. That was the beginning. We also have social elections in Belgium. So the list for social elections should have a proportional representation of men and women. That was also an important point for us. And also we moved from a women's perspective to a gender's perspective. That's more comprehensive and more correct, I think. And at our Congress at 2019, we then decided to move towards equal representation, also in the interprofessional bodies and also gender proportional representation in the sectors. Moreover, it is essential also to have a real policy of gender mainstreaming within the unions, to cross over, reference all our actions and work teams from a gender perspective. So in 2004, the three Belgian trade unions adopted together the gender mainstreaming charter, which was then taken up by all governments in Belgium, and signing it was a big step. It declares the equality is no longer for women only, but of all. So that was a significant step. Now, what the concrete actions betreft, the concrete actions, since 2002, each year, our Gender Equality Service collects the facts and figures and analyzes also the figures and highlights also the positive actions in our trade union. And yearly, there is a report on the progress of gender equality within our trade union, the CSC. Facts and figures, yeah, it's very important. This report is also presented to our General Council, and the latest one was from March 2022. Over the years, the reports show that we are making progress. Women have become, in our organization, more important in the work of our organization and more prominent. And you must also do what you preach. So we said in our daily board, there are 50% women and 50% men. So that's, yes, that's very important. Also in sectors of the industry, METEA is a sector in our organization. There are more than 50% of women in their daily board. So that are little steps, but it's important to do also what you preach. Some regions also have reached parity. Then the places where until gender diversity is not achieved, every outgoing permanent member is replaced by, or must be replaced by women permanent member. So yeah, these are also important things to say. In 2022, we are now, so the work is not finished. There is still a long way to go to achieve equality and full representation of women in the union structure, but especially in the decision-making positions. It requires sustained attention. It's a fight every day. When I see in my trade union, women continue to join our organization. They are presented 47% of our members. But on the other hand, I see the number of women activists that remains still far below their representation in the union membership. It is 37%, so that's 10% lower. So we must fight. Also in the elected work councils, we saw that women are represent 41%. Yes, we take also actions to increase the participation of women. We have the trainings to raise awareness for mandates within and outside the CSC, or the intervention days for women in leadership. It's also important. And every year in the month of March, we, in our trade union, there is a month of action for equal pay, and also about other themes that concern women. So that's also important to have an action month so you can get the attention also in Belgium for that kind of actions. Also, there are the campaigns. We, in cooperation with various associations, so it's not only the trade union, but we network and also other organizations can mobilize also together. For example, this, the 25th November, there is the action, the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. That's the manifestation in Brussels, and we will be there all together. It's also, the 8th of March is also an important day. When we're discussing also the themes in our General Council, the consequences for women were also explicitly discussed. That's also important. For example, in cases for example, it's the COVID crisis, then we also explain what the consequences are for women at the General Council. Also, the pension debate, or now the energy crisis. It's also important to what is the consequence for women. Also, on our congresses, we do the gender tests. We read and reread our text and guidelines. So we test also, it's okay wat de gender theme betreft. This is also internally we try to fight also tackling the issue of gender-based and sexual violence. That's also a theme that we discuss inside and an important fight. And also we're working with the testimonies in our meetings of migrants, transgenders, on racism and discrimination on the workplace, and supporting and guiding also the women and make them stronger to fight for it. So that are the examples of action, but I think I've told enough now. Just let's fight together for a better world, and also here with the power here of all the women here, I think it's possible. Together we are strong.
Thank you, Anne. And Anne, of course, is also living testimony to the fact that she's not only committed to these principles, but is in a position of authority to make sure that they happen. But we could talk about the nitty-gritty of how you do this, delve into the issues, the successes, the failures, but I don't have time, unfortunately, because of the limited time left to us. But what I want to say is you heard common themes. You heard, you know, be vigilant, mobilise around issues, reach out and build relationships, put people in place that give examples so others know that you can actually meet the test. And of course, make sure that you're actually demanding policy change so that women's lives are protected through legislative and indeed government policy. So I think there's a lot to be said there, but I want to pick up on one thing and ask the three of them to stay here. All our sisters raise the issue of really good examples, of women who actually are there so they can show a light to others. And I want to pay tribute to one woman who's no longer with us, but we have a great, a really inspirational legacy from a woman many of you will know called Ella Butt. Ella actually was the founder of SIWA. And I'm going to ask Jyoti to come and join me on stage for just a couple of minutes. That's all we've got, sadly. But while Ella's name will appear in our obituaries formally in the course of the Congress, what those of you who knew her know is that Ella changed lives. In fact, Ella's legacy helped us change the union movement. And I'm going to steal a little bit from another great Sewa woman, Renana, who wrote a tribute. And from her perspective, she said she cared about women who worked. They worked so hard, and yet they were unrecognised, invisible, and earned a pittance for their labour. The street vendors, the rag pickers, the agricultural workers, and so many more. She changed the lives of millions of these women by bringing them together, by giving them a voice, by changing their economic conditions and inspiring them to change the lives of those around them. Ella Batt had a vision to change the world, to bring about change from the bottom up. But she believed that this revolution should be non-violent, it should be caring, it should be based on the truth, and it should come about by people changing their lives collectively in accordance with these values. She especially believed in the value of simplicity, of focusing on what matters, indeed focusing on what you were trying to achieve and making sure that people were recognised along the way. In her own life, she embodied a very simple way of life, but with a boundless enthusiasm for new ideas, new experiments, and untiring proselytisation or advocacy of her cause. She had many visions of her own. She wrote about different types of economy, just as we're doing now, economies of nurturance rather than that of exploitation. She and the millions who influenced her turned these ideas into action, and today we have Sewa amongst us. Her ideas and the movement now 50 years later have been taken up by young women. To see the intergenerational strength of Sewa is indeed an inspiration. But I also wanted to tell you that Ella and her sisters helped us change the union movement, because before Sewa joined our ranks, I don't think I'd ever heard anybody talk about the informal economy. And indeed, Helen Creed, who is here, who was the chair of the Women's Committee and sat on the governing body of the ICFTU, when we affiliated Sewa to the ICFTU, I can tell you it was not easy. We had much opposition from men saying they're not a union. They don't deal with women who have real jobs, who are indeed contracted by employment. They're a women's union. They're all women. That's not right, they would say. And I can tell you, Guy Ryder, who was secretary at the time, and I was his president, wasn't always comfortable with women like Ella and Jyoti and Rima and Renana, Helen, myself, Kathy, you know, your predecessor from the AFL ranks, absolutely were not comfortable with us saying, excuse me, we're just going to exclude women because they don't fit the traditional male form of employment. Well, we won, but we won it because women worked together. And now Sewa has inspired many other unions, including some of those male-dominated unions, to organise in the informal sector. So I think it's absolutely fitting, and I'm just looking for Jyoti or Manoli out there to see if they are here. Please come up. Jyoti, we only have a couple of minutes, but can you give us your view about a woman who did change lives and changed our movement, Ella Batt?
Sure, thank you. It's still so upsetting and I mean, uneasy to digest it that we have no more Ella Batt with us. And I just wanted to tell that because on April 12th, 22 this year, we celebrated our union's 50 years, and Ella Batt was with us celebrating with thousands of leaders on 50 years. And while I was preparing with her on how do we celebrate it. She only gave me one message because I was planning how many things we did in 50 years. Let us list out, let us celebrate that. And she told me that you are not celebrating the 50 years which are gone, but you are celebrating the 50 years which are coming, because Seva is going to celebrate 100 years. So it's 100 years. And just look forward that in 100 years, what are your dreams for your generations to come and enjoy their lives. So see that, not the backward. So this was her last message to all of us. And I just wanted to give a tribute because she had a beautiful, very small vision while Seva Union was registered. And that's the vision still very much relevant to us, specifically in our country. And it's just few lines I would like to read out because I would like to pay our tribute to her in that we will never forget her vision. And that millions of workers in independent India are yet to enjoy Purna Swaraj, meaning full freedom. Freedom is enjoying self-reliance, both economic and mental, in thinking and decision-making. In our experience, this is not possible without full employment. Full employment means that every household enjoys basic food security, has access to clean water, clothing, and shelter. They should be able to afford this from their own earnings. They should also obtain social security, including healthcare, childcare, insurance, and pension. Seva will continue to struggle till she achieves full employment. This will be Seva's main goal. Seva members will work together to obtain full employment by organizing and through non-violent struggle and constructive action. Seva's core values are and will continue to be integrity, communal harmony, social justice, and simplicity. Seva's strategy is to organize women workers into unions, cooperatives, or collectives for self-reliance. Through organizing, women workers will have voice and their work will be more visible. Their contribution to the nation economies will be valued. Full freedom will be achieved when women workers lead their families and communities. Our tribute is this to Elaban. But I really would like to thank you, Mr. Saran, as you said that before 10 years, while Seva was struggling in terms of getting affiliated to the ITUC, and I think on behalf of Seva, even remembering Elaban's, because he always told us in the beginning that Seva is fighting for 3 V's, and that is voice, visibility, and validity of the work in the informal economy. And I think I thank you, ITUC, to give all the 3 to us. Thank you.
And I think Liz, Kathy Feingold, if Barbara Shaler was with us today, she would be feeling just like we feel at the loss of Ella, because she was such a strong fighter, and we've lost her as well, for women in the informal economy. But Jyoti, for you and all the sisters, our love is with you. We know how much Ella's inspiration not just strengthened you and the new young leaders that you are so determined to bring on board, but strengthened, frankly, all of us with a light of inspiration that's pretty hard to meet. So thank you all. And here are 3 other leaders that represent all of you in not just their determination and their vision, but their actual achievements and their determined visions to achieve more for the future. So thank you all very much.
Thank you. As we watch this, can we ask the regional committee chairs to come join us? Thank you so much for that wonderful panel, also that wonderful tribute. Just a reminder that the work we stand on the shoulders of giants as we move forward in this work. We want to take a moment to introduce the 4 regional chairs and give them a minute to introduce themselves to you. So we'll start with, well, go ahead, take the mic.
Okay, thank you, Sharon. Thank you for giving me the floor. I'm Sabine Slegers, Secrétaire Nationale de la Belgique, Belgium. I will talk in English. Now, dear sisters here, I bring you a special greeting to all of you from the Sisters of the Pan-European region. We fully understand and support the ITUC call for a new social contract, grounded in equality and equity. From the 7 important topics we heard about today, the PERC has and will continue to place special attention on 2 of them in particular. First, seeing our own resolution on COVID-19 crisis, we emphasize the importance of occupational and health safety and social protection. And when it comes to social protection, we also like to remind that pension gap should not be forgotten in the discussions, because for us, this seems to be an extra negative effect of the gender pay gap, and it puts elderly women in poverty. Now, sisters, to all of you in the room, let's hear your voice during this 5th ITUC Congress, and afterwards, let's make that this social contract really is equal in the world of work. And if I may, I just want to end with a special message of support for our sisters in Ukraine, who are today suffering for a tabular war, and some of them are here present at the Congress to continue to fight for rights of women of all over the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Sabine. And as all of you know, our structure means that the regional women's committees do so much of this work, and you're a big part of that. So thank you so much. Would you like to take the floor?
Bueno, muchas gracias. Nos dieron 2 minutos nada más para cerrar. Agradecer a las compañeras y a las mujeres de este país, traer el abrazo para todas ustedes, las compañeras de las mujeres trabajadoras de las Américas, que muchas están hoy acá acompañándonos. Decirles que reafirmamos como continente, como Américas, nuestro compromiso de seguir trabajando e intervenir en la realidad, no solamente en la defensa de nuestras condiciones de trabajo y salarios, sino para modificar la realidad social y política, teniendo en cuenta que el sistema que ustedes hoy han descrito bien, nos ha llevado a esta crisis y que este sistema no está capacitado para sacarnos de esta crisis y que eso va a tener que ser parte de nuestra tarea como clase trabajadora. Luchamos por la paz, contra la militarización de los territorios, en defensa de nuestros bienes comunes, en defensa del agua, de una transición justa, en defensa de los servicios públicos, de la protección social, contra todas las formas de violencia, y con esa consigna que me parece que nos aúna a todas nosotras, y tomando la agenda planteada por este 4º Congreso que vamos a llevar a nuestro territorio, a nuestro continente, para seguir trabajándola con todas ustedes. Así que en nuestra historia y en el futuro está la conquista de nuestros derechos y el triunfo y la convicción de una sociedad más justa y equitativa para todas y para todos. Muchas gracias.
Gracias, Alejandra. And thank you to the technicians for picking up. I changed the order. Excellent. Gladys, will go to you.
Hello.
It's on.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, brave women, my elite women. I bring you greetings from Africa and especially from our coordinator, Gislin, Sister Gislin, who is unavoidably absent. But we want to bring you greetings from all the women around Africa. When I was asked to do a quick round of what we would take home, and after reading the document that was prepared, I want to say I salute the Equality Department for a well-prepared document, because all the answers are in the document. So I thank you very much for the document. Yeah. But I quickly want to say that in taking home from this conference, some of the few things that I think could be the way forward under the care economy is to invest. And all of us have been saying investment, investment. But more particularly is to see how we could give value to those women who are working within the care economy, that their work are not valued, and because of that they are underpaid. Also, I want to talk about the issue of the gender-based violence, because we see over the period of the pandemic, it was a rising issue in every homes and in every offices about the issue of the gender-based violence. Therefore, as we go home, let us take every abuse very seriously, listen to them, give them a voice, build a policy within the trade union structure, within workplace structure, that will speak to those issues of violence, so that issues of violence will be a thing of the past. In the area of equality, for bringing women into the field of equality, I think we as trade union movement, we have to ensure that we allow more women to participate, do more training, reskill of women, so that they are able to address issues of the day and they are able to match up with the situation that they find themselves. Ladies and gentlemen present in the House, we cannot do more if we continue to listen to the beautiful history and stories written in books, but unless we come out from all of them and be proactive and address them as we walk the talk, we cannot go further. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And then our fourth regional chair, go ahead, take the floor.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Yoshiko Norimatsu, the chair of ITUC AP Women's Committee. From now on, I'd like to speak in my mother tongue. Sorry. 女性集会の成果文書に、また、今日の多くの発言で触れられていましたように、COVID-19 による世界的な危機によって男女は平等ではなかったということが改めて洗い出されました。先住民の女性、インフォーマル経済の女性など、現在の危機以前から非常に弱い立場にあった女性がパンデミックで特に大きな打撃を受けていることも再確認しました。そして今年、パキスタンでは大規模な洪水も発生し、国土の3分の1が水に浸かってしまいました。洪水によって仕事と収入を失った人たちの多くは農民と、そして非正規で働く女性たちだったと言います。今日は PWF の副会長のデューさんからもパキスタンにおける女性の状況と取り組みについて報告がありました。今回の世界的な危機や各地での災害によって明白になった社会のさまざまな格差、差別、暴力に対して私たちは改めて向き合い、災害の有無にかかわらず日常的に格差是正の取り組みを推進することが重要です。日本においては、今年301人以上の企業に対して男女の賃金の差異の把握と公表が義務付けられました。これはこの間、私たち連合が男女間賃金格差是正を方針に掲げて取り組んできた結果だとも言えます。誰もが課題を客観的に把握できるようにすることは、その課題解決のための重要な基礎となるでしょう。そのためにも組合における意思決定機関にとどまらず、 地域の議会や国会にも女性をはじめとした課題当事者が参画し、労働者の生活向上のために条例や法を変えることは変革のための大切な力と、非常に大きな力となります。皆さん、本日を契機にそれぞれの組織において、そして ITUC において、より多くの仲間とつながり、共に勇気ある新たな一歩を踏み出して、世界の潮流を作っていきましょう。ありがとうございました。
Thank you, Yoshiko, and thank you to all of you for your work and your remarks today, but all the work that got us to this point. You're welcome to stay for a minute if you want. We're just going to work through the wrap up. And so thank you to all the speakers who were a part of today's deliberations. I think the insight and inspiration of story is so important. And so we thank you for them for being here. Thank you to all the leaders, all of you, for bringing those moments of vision and the concrete actions that we can bring to promote women in leadership and to promote our issues at all levels of our own organizations, as well as within community and government. And so thank you so much for your critical engagement. This is just the beginning. We have many days to continue to connect with each other, to continue to hear our voices raised. And so, as was said, I hope that you take opportunities to ensure that our priorities are raised at any time they can. So thank you to the ITUC and to the Equality Department for getting us to this point. Huge thank you to Paula and the team. It is unbelievable the work that was done in the 2 virtual sessions to get us to this document that I think is so valuable is not done in isolation. It is done with so much work. So thank you so much. I want to say a huge thanks to Sharon for ensuring we didn't have to force the issue of gender equality at any of the tables. For her support for the work that we do has been outstanding. So just a huge thanks for that. We want to just highlight some upcoming events. There's a Congress Forum on the 20th at 3 p.m. in the plenary hall on inclusive trade union movements, where many of the issues discussed today will be discussed there. So we encourage you to attend that. We also invite you to participate in the 3 side events. There's SDGs for New Social Contract on the 18th. The First Nations Indigenous Workers on the 19th of November, and the LGBT IQA Plus on the 20th. And of course, all that information is in the agenda that you have in your lanyard. So please take a look at that, because we really want to see you there. We want to just say that after this, we want to take a group photo, and then we're going to have the Women's Committee, and we're trying to squeeze a lot into a short amount of time, but I have all the trust in the world that you are able to accomplish this. So I just want to say that we started this by Shelley singing about I am strong, and of course that is each and every one in this room, and we know that together we are unstoppable. So thank you for your leadership and for getting us to this point.